The story begins with a boy named Haruto, who seems to be leaving his current city for somewhere else. But tears stream down Miharu's face as she holds on to him, not wanting him to leave. Haruto quickly takes her hand to comfort her, promising that when he grows up, he will return and marry her, and even promising that even in death, he will stay by her side. He boards a bus, which gets into a traffic accident, and he dies. In the kingdom of Bircham at the beginning of spring, a boy named Ryo wakes up after a long sleep and finds himself in an unfamiliar room. Memories of a past life as a boy named Amakawa Haruto keep appearing in his head, but he cannot understand what these memories are. Several men enter with a large bag and are surprised to see Ryo still alive. One of them thinks the boy had died because he had a high fever the day before. They talk about business while enjoying their meal. Ryo's stomach growls, and one of them calls Ryo, who responds cheerfully, thinking he would be called to eat. But the man says he smells and tells him to go take a bath. Leaving the room, he picks some fruit to eat. The memory of who Haruto was and how he died appears again, but he decides that he is not that person. He is still Ryo, who lives in a filthy slum to avenge his mother. He recalls his last moments with his mother, when he asked why they both had black hair, and she said it was because she and her husband came from a very far place. She promised to take him to meet his grandparents in Goro when he grew up, but a murderer killed her. Ryo cries a little, wipes his face, and puts on his clothes. Then several women approach him but don't come close. Because of the smell on his body, one of them asks if he has seen a purple-haired girl around his age, and he says no. They decide to handle the situation. She approaches and apologizes for startling him. She introduces herself as Celia, and he says his name is Ryo and that his parents were immigrants. Celia can tell that because of his black hair. She asks again about the girl they are looking for, but he still answers the same. She asks if they can find the girl in the slum, but he advises against it, as it is not a place for well-dressed ladies like them. She asks what people wear in the slum, and he says like commoners but tattered and ragged. Vanessa suggests they should change clothes and come back, but Christina says they should hurry. Vanessa says they should be careful not to cause disruption. Vanessa tells Celia to look for magical reactions in the vicinity. Celia chants a spell and, surprisingly, she can sense magic within Ryo, and tells the other girls that there is a rather large amount of mana overflowing. He has the potential needed to use magic, but he is surprised to learn that the strange light on him is magic. Vanessa asks if there are any other reactions, but she says the magical reactions found are from them and Ryo. Ryo wonders about his body, while the young ladies decide to check other houses, but Celia quickly returns to pay him for the information. Ryo opens the small wallet and sees it contains many silver coins. He looks around, keeps the gift, and runs home to meet the men. Ryo opens the door, and a masked stranger suddenly grabs him, and is about to stab him in the chest. But fortunately, the gift blocks the stab. The gift falls to the ground. The masked stranger closes the door and moves toward him. He looks around and sees everyone is dead and asks the masked man who he is. He is about to swing his sword at him when a woman like an angel appears and calls him Haruto. She promises to teach him how to use his mana. She touches Ryo's cheek and tells him to hone his senses. Light begins to emit from his body and dissipates into the air. When the man almost hits, he dodges and punches him in the stomach. The stranger chants a spell to enhance his physique and makes more moves to kill him, but he eventually knocks him to the ground, and his mask falls off. Ryo is surprised to see the masked man is the boss. Then he hears someone's voice from the bag earlier. He quickly opens it, and it's the girl the others were looking for. The girl begs him to save her and take her to the castle, and her father will reward him. The girl looks to the side and sees a dead man, then faints. Ryo carries the girl outside the village and meets the women on the road. Christina thinks he lied to them, so she goes over and slaps him. She takes her sister Floria from his arms and calls everyone to help. Christina asks Ryo what he was plotting when he kidnapped her sister, but he says it was the girl who asked him to. Vanessa asks Ryo to explain in detail to them, but he only says that Floria asked him. Christina interrupts him and grabs Ryo's collar. Ryo grabs and squeezes her hand, telling her to listen to the end. Vanessa draws her sword to warn Ryo, and Christina stops provoking. They release each other, but Christina says she will accuse him when the military arrives. Vanessa insists on hearing what happened from him, and Christina tells her to arrest him quickly. Vanessa says Ryo will have to go with them to the castle, but he refuses. Vanessa says it's an order. He says all he did was save the girl. Vanessa says he will have to tell them what he knows. He feels that trying to resist would just waste time, so he agrees to go along, but only to talk. Vanessa says he will be released if innocent. Some members of the royal family come to check the house where the incident occurred, and one of the guards calls Artira, saying they found a man still breathing. The guard brings the masked stranger. An anonymous person in the crowd sees and crushes a stone, causing the masked stranger to die instantly. The anonymous person confirms he is dead and leaves the area. At the castle, Rio's hands are tied up, and he is being tortured by Charlotte Adu, the vice captain of the royal guard. Rio asks why he is being tortured. He only agreed to come to the castle to talk. Charlotte says Rio will have to tell him everything he knows about the kidnapping of the second princess. He will go easy on him if he cooperates with the investigation and will release him immediately if he admits complicity in the kidnapping of the second princess. But Rio says he did no such thing. Charlotte gets angry and beats Rio badly. Charlotte asks him a second time, but he still answers the same. Princess Floria finally wakes up. Seeing Vanessa and Celia, she explains what happened. But Vanessa tells her that an investigation is underway to determine if Rio's testimony is true. Princess Floria tells Vanessa to summon him to her, but Vanessa says she needs His Majesty's approval. Princess Floria tells her to arrange it quickly as she cannot let him suffer any inconvenience. Vanessa and Celia leave to relay the message. Charlotte is still beating and continuously questioning, but nothing changes, and Rio is exhausted. One of the guards tells Charlotte that Rio will die. He continues torturing because of the kidnapping of Princess Floria. He adds that things will not end well for the guard if they do not restore their reputation. While he is speaking, Vanessa and Celia arrive and see he has been brutally tortured. Charlotte says he is conducting a lawful interrogation. Celia tells the guard to release Rio. Charlotte says it is very likely Rio was involved in the princess's kidnapping. But Vanessa tells him that Princess Floria said she owes Rio her life. Charlotte is very happy to learn Princess Floria is alive, as that's the most important thing. He orders the guards to release Rio. Celia tries to help, but he tells her not to touch him, and he falls to the ground. Celia feels guilty and says she will heal him. Charlotte tells his people to leave the scene. Rio wakes up and finds himself in a room. He asks where he is, and Celia replies that he is in the palace. She asks about his condition. He is surprised to see himself without any injuries. Celia feels guilty for causing him to go through something terrible. Rio asks if she is the one who healed him. She confirms that, and adds that she is also studying magic at the Royal Academy, and says her full name is Celia Keller. She asks if he remembers her, and he says yes and thanks her. Rio asks what will happen to him, and Celia says he will have an audience with His Majesty. The king wants to personally express his gratitude. Rio begs her to teach him the necessary etiquette for an audience. He cannot meet the king without knowing any rules. Celia agrees to teach him. They shake hands and look forward to working together. At the palace, Rio is welcomed by the king and royal family members. To repay what he did, the king allows him to study at the Royal Academy. Celia tells Rio that they haven't assessed his abilities yet, so she asks if he knows how to read and write. But Rio has never been to school. Celia says she will tutor him, telling him to come to her laboratory after school. Celia says many kids at the academy come from royal families or have titles. He says it's fine and knows his place. Celia then says he shouldn't hesitate to come to her if he has any problems. Celia opens the classroom door and welcomes Rio to the Royal Academy. Celia announces a transfer student. Rio will join the class from today. She says everyone should treat him well. The class begins to whisper. Celia tells him to introduce himself, and he introduces himself as Rio, saying that thanks to His Majesty's kindness, he has been allowed to study here. He says he is lacking in many ways, but hopes the other students will be considerate. A student says Rio seems to talk like a servant, and the whole class bursts into laughter. Celia praises him and tells him to go to his seat. Then she begins the lecture. Celia tells them to solve the problem she wrote on the board by themselves. Celia goes to Rio and tells him not to strain himself today. The other students hear and laugh, mocking Rio for not knowing how to read. But Celia tells everyone to focus on their work. After class, Rio looks for Celia's laboratory. He hears her voice from outside, so he knocks. Celia opens the door and scolds him for not reading the sign. But he quickly apologizes for not knowing how to read. Celia realizes it's Rio. He says he's come to ask about private tutoring. She says she's been waiting while Rio knows well that she forgot. She allows him into her office, but it's very messy. She explains that it's just a bit messy right now, but she is usually much neater. While she tries to clean up the space, Rio sees her bookshelf and says she looks very young. She says she's only 12 years old. She should be in elementary school, but she skipped grades and graduated from high school. She gives him some calculations to solve, and he completes them in a moment. Celia is surprised at how quickly he solved them, but he says it's just simple multiplication and division. Celia admits the only person in his class who could do that is Princess Christina. Rio remembers he was once a college student, so it makes sense. Celia asks where he learned arithmetic, and he says from his deceased mother. Celia feels guilty. He drinks tea and likes it very much. Celia asks how his first day at the academy was. For him, there was nothing special. She says again, if there's anything, to let her know. He wants some children's books. He wants to learn to read, and she agrees. Today is practice day, and everyone has sparring partners, but only Rio has to practice alone. The teacher tells him to come and attack him in any way. All the other students are watching. He remembers that his master once said the same thing when he wanted to fight. The way he fights shows he's very skilled in swordsmanship. But the other students still say unfavorable things about him. The teacher says he has the qualities of a knight, but he has no interest in joining the knight team and thanks him. After class, Celia compliments him. He says the final exam is coming, so he needs to study hard. Celia says he just enrolled, so he doesn't need to worry about grades. He's not worried, but will try his best. On exam day, Celia tells everyone to do their best. After the exam, he leaves the class to the playground. Suddenly, a memory of a girl named Mikan appears. The students notice and begin to gossip about him. He leaves their sight to return to his room. He recalls a girl named Asami Heizu, Haruto's childhood friend. But the two were separated when Haruto's parents divorced. He met Mikan again in high school, but she never returned to school. She erased herself from his sight. Ryo believes that Amikawa Haruto is dead, and he is no longer Amikawa Haruto. He is now Ryo, and that's why he will continue to live. He will persevere and be strong. The final exam results are announced, and Ryo's name appears along with Princess Christina's, surprising the students. Ryo joins them at the bulletin board. Jealous students come to ask if he cheated, but he doesn't understand what they mean. The girl points at the board and says a commoner could never stand on par with Princess Christina. Ryo says he just did the exam normally, but Alphonse believes Ryo must have cheated. Princess Christina stops the argument and says a gentleman's jealousy is unsightly. Alphonse shouts that he cannot let this pass and will expose the truth. Princess Christina asks if he has any evidence. She says unfounded accusations harm the dignity of the academy. Celia says this achievement is the result of Ryo's hard work. Alphonse says he won't accept this and leaves with his friends. Ryo wants to thank Princess Christina. She quickly interrupts, saying she didn't intervene for him and telling him that next time he won't beat her, then leaves. In Celia's laboratory, she congratulates Ryo for topping the final exam. She's a bit worried when thinking many students are looking to find fault with him. He's used to that. Celia says being bullied by nobles is due to their bad character. Ryo asks if something similar happened to her. There were rumors from people of higher social status, but she ignored them all. At that time, she had friends. Ryo says he'll be fine because he has her. She just feels like he's teasing her, treating her like a child, but Ryo considers her a friend. Ryo says that if in trouble, Celia should advise him as a teacher and as a friend. She will hug him if he gets bullied. Ryo teases again that she's still quite small for that. At the practice field, the teacher announces a friendly tournament between the kingdom's knights will be held this year. Representatives for the elementary division have been selected from the class. The teacher calls the names of those chosen, and the students whisper, especially Alphonse. He doesn't accept this, because such a lowly person is chosen to participate in a knight tournament, saying it's a disgrace. Moreover, Ryo cannot use magic. The master says it has been decided and doesn't care whether he agrees or not. Back in Celia's laboratory, she says she heard Ryo will participate in the tournament, and he says yes. Celia says if Ryo performs well in the tournament, knights might recruit him even before he graduates. She's having trouble placing a book on the shelf, and Ryo helps her while saying he has no intention of becoming a knight. She notices Ryo has grown taller and says it's been maybe 5 years, but tells her that she's still as small as ever. She yells at him not to call her small. She's still growing. Ryo says she said that 5 years ago, and then she reminds him that the tea will get cold. This time Ryo makes tea for them. She likes it. She says the aroma is completely different when Ryo makes tea. Ryo says he followed the instructions he read in a book. Celia asks what he will do after graduation since he doesn't want to become a knight. He will travel because there's a place he wants to visit. Celia asks if he wants to leave the country. For him, this country doesn't suit him. Celia asks why not work here, because without him, everything will be in disarray. With him making tea and cleaning her laboratory, Ryo always scolds her when she's too absorbed in research. Ryo says he appreciates her concern, but sooner or later she'll have a small family. It wouldn't be good to have a commoner in her laboratory. The girl has no plans to start a family soon and says she can do whatever she likes. Ryo compliments her beauty, making her shy. She asks where he wants to go. He's going to his parents' homeland, the Jagumo region. She says Jagumo is a place on the edge of the wilderness. Ryo remembers his mother's promise to take him to Jagumo. When Celia calls him, he comes back to reality. The tournament between the Knights of the Kingdom's Glory and the students of the Royal Academy begins. Afet Emerli introduces himself as the referee. Afet introduces the first challenger, Ryo. When he steps onto the stage, Alphonse tells him not to put on a miserable display. He will lower him. Ryo says he'll try his best not to have an ugly match. Celia calls, telling him to stay calm. Ryo tells the judge he's ready to fight. Afet says the first challenger from the Royal Guard team is Charlotte Abo, who tortured Ryo at the Royal Palace. Charlotte says he knew he would be admitted to the academy, but didn't expect that dirty kid from that day to be his opponent. Rio says he owes Charlotte a debt for his care that day. The opponents are ready. Afet sees Rio beginning to take a defensive stance, and Charlotte feels like he's being mocked for not carrying a shield. The match begins. Rio continuously dodges and blocks attacks, while he's fighting his hardest just to get revenge because he was demoted. Finally, he quickly knocks away his weapon. The referee declares him the winner. Charlotte tries to ask for a second chance, but a loss is a loss. Afet tells Charlotte if he's a member of the Royal Guard, he should accept defeat and leave on his own. Charlotte admits defeat. The teacher and Celia cheer and praise Rio. The crowd applauds as he walks off the stage. On the same night, Charlotte is angry and talks a lot about the match. He has been talking with the mysterious killer from 5 years ago. The next day, Celia hopes Rio will show up. To celebrate his victory, she sees him but seems to be going somewhere. Rio meets a woman. It turns out that girl gave him a love letter because he looked very handsome in the previous battle. Then she gets embarrassed and runs away. But Rio doesn't understand at all. Celia sees everything happening and seems to be jealous. Celia is checking the students' post-graduation plans, but she cannot find Rio's. He is the only one who hasn't written anything. Then she remembers that he told her in her laboratory that he wanted to go outside. Then continuing Celia's magic class, she teaches about mana control, which almost every student can do. So anyone who hasn't learned it doesn't deserve to study here. They can do it, but this level is not considered proficient. So she continues to explain for them to understand. Demonstrating her abilities makes the students realize their own potential. After class, Celia receives praise from students, but one of them blames Rio for always flirting with girls. Stia is reminded by Celia not to tease others, which makes him angry and challenges Rio again. Floria is busy admiring Rio until her sister reminds her. Afterward, they get to enter the forest for practical learning, and they need to form teams for better safety. Then the rules for this lesson are explained, and the privileged students all have maps to bend the rules, and they still don't forget to tease Rio, forcing him to carry luggage for everyone, which he accepts. The young Princess Floria comes to check on him, but he declines her help. Rio is left behind, and Floria worries about his mistreatment. Suddenly, monsters appear before them. But Afonso tells the students not to worry too much because they are goblins. Afonso directs the vanguard to use artifacts to enhance their physical abilities. When he rushes forward to defeat all the goblins, Afonso says they are nothing significant, but they need more formidable monsters. Afonso calls out, "Don't just stand there dumbfounded." Rio apologizes, and they continue their journey. Rio is especially being watched by mysterious people in the forest. He is amazed that Rio can sense him. The students find a way out of the forest and feel close to their target, but in front of them is a cliff. They begin to wonder if the information is wrong. Christina asks what their commander should do, and suddenly a spear is thrown from the bushes, nearly hitting Jonah. The enemy reveals themselves, and they are orcs. Afonso calls the vanguards to raise their shields and block the spears. Rio blocks the spear flying towards him, but Stia, holding a shield, gets his legs slashed by a spear. Screaming and running close to a student who is fighting, but that student pushes him away, causing Stia to bump into Floria, and she falls off the cliff. Rio quickly flies after her, activating his power to push her up. While he falls off the cliff, Floria stands up to look but doesn't see him. With the magic of the students, they conquered the orc group. Rio thinks that his falling off the cliff without injury might look suspicious. For other students, he's sure it's not magic or magical technique, but he can't know what that power is. Even the woman who appeared when he was fighting with the masked man doesn't know. Then he hears the voices of students on the cliff, blaming Stia for pushing Floria off the cliff. Stia tries to convince some students. It's all Rio's fault that Princess Floria fell off the cliff. The commander says they should find a way out of the forest. Floria asks if they plan to leave Rio behind, but Afonso says he got what he deserved. He hears everything and feels his graduation plan will not succeed, so he leaves. Floria tells the other students that she will help Rio even if she's alone. They hear a deep voice, the ground shaking with each step of the monster. A ferocious monster roars at them, and the commander is afraid. Princess Christina chants a lightning ball to try to attack, but the monster blocks the attack. Afonso suggests they use ice spears and calls the vanguards to enhance their physical abilities. The girls chant ice spear while the guards chant physical enhancement. The ferocious monster dodges the ice attack and attacks the vanguards. Afonso shouts that they must retreat. While others run, Floria has stayed behind to heal some injured students. The monster comes to her and is about to harm her, but Rio appears and cuts off one of the monster's arms. Rio tells Floria to take the injured students and stay away. Rio fights the monster with all his might, until he has an attack to slash the monster's neck and it disappears, leaving the area before the students realize he was the one who killed the ferocious monster. The mysterious man sees how he fights the monster and feels he is an interesting guy to him. He notices Ryo's black hair, possibly saying that he is a descendant of those who drifted here from the Jagumo region, and that is why he can use spirit magic. He laughs and leaves. Celia is walking on a road and complaining about why she is always assigned many tasks. Then she hears the judge talking with Afet and Stia. They are trying to push the situation and make Ryo the center of it, even though he is missing. Celia wonders what could have happened. While she is worrying in her laboratory, Ryo knocks and enters her laboratory. He apologizes for causing a disruption. At first sight, she runs and hugs him, touching his body and asking if he's okay. But Ryo says it tickles. He explains everything to her, and she also informs him that they are slandering him. Celia tells him that he did nothing wrong, but Ryo says it's those with power who decide what's right or wrong. Even if he appeals with the truth, no one will admit it, and that's because he doesn't belong to the nobility. Celia wishes she could do something about it. Ryo thanks her for all she's done for him and says he's very happy to have met her. He says she's the only one he wanted to say goodbye to. He tells her that he will go to the Jagumo region. Celia admits that she wants to see him graduate, but tells him to send her letters on his journey. But he will use the alias Haruto. They hope to see each other again. She hugs him and wishes him all the best until he returns. This girl then remembers the memory of when they first met and tears flow down her face. Afet throws the assassination target's clothes to an imprisoned girl to smell, so she always remembers the target's scent. He describes the target as a 12-year-old boy named Ryo with black hair. He tells the girl to find and kill him at all costs. The girl agrees to carry out the assassination. After 3 days of walking in the forest from Bacham, Ryo finds a neighboring kingdom and arrives at the market town of Amans in the kingdom of Gala. He writes a letter. At the market, he sees a wanted notice being circulated in the royal capital. He cannot buy the necessities for his journey, but he feels relieved that there is no warrant for him in the kingdom of Gala. Celia doesn't need to worry. Although it's his first time in Amans, Ryo finds it a bustling town with abundant food, and it seems like he will be able to buy preserved food quickly. As he strolls around town, the assassin girl is following him. Ryo senses the surveillance, so he quickly turns back but sees nothing. When Ryo wanders around, he hears a man advertising pasta, so he approaches to listen. The man describes how the town came up with soup-style pasta, thanks to Lisa Lot, the manager who made this dish. He's thinking, how did this dish appear here? He requests a bowl. He eats the first bite and really likes it. A quick flashback about Haruto eating noodles, so he thinks could Lisa have come here like Haruto did? But then he quickly dismisses the thought. After the meal, he continues his journey to Jagumo because that's the promise he made to his mother. He finds a building that the vendor described, the Guild of Merchants, where he will find a manzu shop. He sees a woman and her child eating manzu meat buns, and there's a mantu shop nearby. He enters the building and looks around, until a guild staff tells him that weapons are not allowed here. They can take care of it while he shops. When Ryo removes his hood, she sees his black hair and is a bit surprised. She receives the sword and thanks him for his cooperation. She introduces herself as Lot, and she will help him today in the store. She helps him pack all his belongings and serves him some black tea. She asks if he's familiar with black tea, and he says among the people he knows, someone really likes black tea, and he has learned a lot from drinking it with her. Lot asks if he recognizes the tea leaf. He says it has a unique aroma and a slightly bitter taste. Their tea is good, and he also likes the tea set. She says the guild's motto is to provide a perfect environment for negotiations to get the best deals with customers. Then she asks if they can handle delivering a letter for him. Ryo rewrites a letter to the professor, saying that he has completed the shopping and is preparing to depart. Once he leaves this area, he will not be able to send more letters, but there's still no need to worry. No news is evidence that he is doing fine. Ryo thanks Lot and the others for their service and leaves. Miss Sheena tells Lisa Lot that Ryo is a bit mysterious, but she answers that currently, she is Lot. As Ryo continues his journey, he sees a girl who has fainted, so he goes to check on her. But she turns out to be the assassin. She injects poison, but he manages to push her away. He looks at the girl's face and ears and realizes she is a demi-human. The girl pulls out a knife and says she will kill him. The poison is taking effect, so he quickly neutralizes the poison and stabilizes himself. He says he cannot let her kill him. The battle begins with both of them dodging each other's attacks. Ryo throws some small arrows, but she dodges them, runs up a tree, and chants physical enhancement. Ryo can't believe she wasn't using magic before and wonders how fast she will be after enhancement. Ryo flies up to chase her, and she throws weapons at him, but he blocks them with his sword. The girl attacks in every way, but he first manages to snatch the knife from her hand, then grabs her and slams her back to the ground. Her eyes are clear, and she starts screaming nonsense. Ryo sees that the screaming won't stop soon. There's no other way than to place his hand on her face until she falls asleep. Ryo ties her hands and feet so she can't do anything when she wakes up. He sees the subjugation collar on her neck, and he has seen a magic spell in a book. He uses it on the collar, and it falls off. The girl was in the bus accident but woke up with a different identity, where she was named Latifa and forced to accept Stia as her brother. But he tortured the girl with spells. Rio wakes her up. She tries to break free, but her limbs are tied. Rio warns her not to be violent like before if she doesn't want to die. She asks to make sure that he won't kill her if she doesn't resist. Rio says that depends on her. Rio asks, but she doesn't answer. He shows her the broken collar. She recognizes it as her collar. Rio says the collar is the reason she followed orders, but she won't feel any pain when answering his questions. She sobs. Rio asks who gave the order and looks around to see if anyone is nearby. But there are only the two of them here. She doesn't know her master's name because she was never told. Rio asks the name of their house, but she quickly remembers that the brother's name is Stia. He asks if he is a demi-human like her, but she says he is human, and he trained her himself. Rio realizes it's Stia, and Duke Hyujin decided to make him disappear because they were afraid of exposing that secret. Everything seems consistent. Rio asks if there's anyone else besides her trying to kill him, asked if she still intends to kill him. Now the girl has no reason anymore. Rio has left all her equipment along with the cloak. He cuts the ropes on her hands. She is free to run away. She doesn't have to go back to her master because the collar controlling her is gone. Tells her to leave the kingdom and go east. A vast land called the wilderness. He says there's a place on that land where demi-humans like her and other sub-humans live together. Rio prepares to leave and reminds her he won't be merciful next time. She continues to follow and is forced to ask what's wrong with her. She wants to go east with him. He didn't free her from slavery because he wanted to save her, but only because not killing her would be more convenient for him. She doesn't know what to do. Rio says he's human. He can't trust her because she might attack him again. She tells him to put the collar back on because she hates being alone like this. Rio tells her to do what she wants and throw away the collar. Rio introduces himself and asks her name, and she says Latifa. Rio prepares food for them in the forest, and it seems she has never eaten such food since being captured. So, Latifa cries while eating but is comforted. Rio and Latifa are about to reach the wilderness, and it's getting dark, so Rio suggests they should set up camp. Celia is very happy to receive Rio's letter, but not receiving further news will make her feel lonely. She hopes that wherever Rio is, he is safe. At night, Rio makes soup for them, and Latifa seems to really like it. Rio asks if she has ever eaten pasta before, and she says she has. Rio tells her that she can eat as much as she likes. Rio reasons if Latifa calls pasta spaghetti, does that mean she comes from Haruto's side? While they sleep at night, Latifa cries in her sleep, waking Rio up. She says she wants to go home. Rio comes close and comforts her. She says she misses her mom, dad, and brother. She says she wants to go to Tokyo. Latifa wakes up the next morning and sees Rio's black hair. She stands up and shouts. She can recognize that he looks like someone she saw before the accident. She comes close and says, "Brother," and he somehow answers and wakes up. Rio says good morning and asks if she slept well. She suddenly bangs her head against the wall, and Rio asks if she's okay. She asks if she can call him Oniai-chan, and he agrees. She says she wants an omelet with cheese for breakfast. Rio notices a large tree not far from them, but Latifa can't see it. Rio wonders if the tree is hidden from people's awareness through magic. Rio wants to go deep into the forest to learn about that tree. But Latifa seems scared and can smell a faint scent. So they decide to rest for the day, and taking the opportunity, Rio wants to learn more about spirit magic as well as useful living methods. With those things being quite normal, they want to find a good teacher for him right away. Then another voice sounds, interrupting the conversation. And right behind him, a girl appears. It is the spirit of the world tree, Ria's. Rio is amazed that she is a spirit. Latifa continues to have nightmares, so Rio transfers some warmth to her to stop the bad dreams. Then light shines outside, and he goes to check. A wolf suddenly glows, and he finds himself completely surrounded. But no matter how he attacks, they avoid him. What's more, he even takes a stunning bomb head-on. But Rio also realizes they seem to be subhumans. They use their own language to talk. Then they assign Ama and Opia to check the tent. Yuzuma decides to wait for Sarah's orders. The girl again accepts his suggestion, but she doesn't like him calling them subhumans. Rio had just reached an agreement and apologized for offending their name when they discover there's a demi-human in the tent who has been put to sleep with spirit magic, so Yuzuma quickly attacks him. While they're talking, he heals wounds and fights while explaining his situation, just wanting these people to protect the girl, and asserting that he didn't kidnap her. While trying to explain and block attacks, his legs get locked, and then he takes a lightning strike and faints. Meanwhile, while unconscious and drifting through life, a pink-haired girl appears, but when asked, she doesn't remember herself, only remembering that she and he are connected to each other, and she belongs only to him. then voices call to wake him up. When he wakes up, he's still dazed and talking nonsense, and surprisingly, Latifa quickly runs to him because she couldn't find him anywhere. And when she sees Rio injured, she glares at everyone. Then an old lady also comes to apologize to Rio and wants to have a few words with Latifa. After that, the leopard people repeatedly kneel and apologize to him for the misunderstanding. Naturally, Yuzuma has to take responsibility for her independent actions. Then they unchain him and apologize for such a reception. After that, the lady also decides to say hello from now on. The next morning, Rio follows the village elder to the largest tree. The majestic scene before him is the spirit world tree that he had seen following him. This tree chants a high-level, wide-area magic barrier. Without high spirit quality, one cannot see it. And the elder realizes Rio hasn't been properly taught about that. And his spirit magic is all self-taught, so in fact, he is a rare talent. Then he invites him to sit with the council of elders regarding a human like him coming here, and this village is where the spirits live, and introduces Yuzura as the old lady from before. Next is the old man Dominic. In response, Rio also formally greets these respected people, and he talks about the misunderstanding that he was a kidnapper and caused trouble for him, and his rescuing their compatriot from slavery has made them deeply grateful to him, and he can feel their sincerity, so he also apologizes for freely entering their dwelling place. After the formalities, the elders want to repay him by doing something for him, but they don't know how to express their sincerity. Rio simply wants them to take in Latifa, which is something they should be begging him for. But the situation is that Latifa is rather attached to him, so he might ask permission to live with her for some more time. Of course, the elders have no problem with that. They also welcome him here. Seeing this young man like this, the elders feel even more interested in him, and they want to show their hospitality as much as possible. And if he needs anything, he should feel free to tell them. Old Dominic even wants to tempt the young man to marry the village girls, making the other elders scold him for flirting. At this time, Rio also has a desire to learn about spirit magic and the way of life in this place, so they also discuss finding him a good teacher. Right after that, a voice cuts across the conversation, and immediately appears behind them. She is Driaz, a spirit of the world tree. She seems to sense within him the presence of another spirit. Although it's a bit weak, as if she's in deep sleep and he might have already made a contract. He doesn't remember anything that happened. And Driaz feels it's a bit strange that after making a contract with a spirit, he can't use magic. And indeed, he can't use magic, so she decides to check him a bit. Immediately after, she strokes his cheek, making the young man a bit surprised, but she senses that inside him contains a large amount of mana, so she feels he's quite delicious, but then senses a humanoid spirit sleeping deeply inside him. To explain, humanoid spirits are extremely rare. They must be semi-high class spirits or higher, like her. Long ago, the high-class spirits called the Six Great Spirits suddenly disappeared in the Holy Demon War more than 1,000 years ago, so it could possibly be that high-class spirit. Rio is curious about what serious problem there is with having a high-class spirit. For him, it's fine, but for the villagers, it's major, because even a semi-high class like her is already deified. So now Rio is welcomed even more ceremoniously than before, not to be treated plainly as before. Treating him like a saint would be correct. Rio has no reason to refuse such good privileges. Then he is led to a house where Latifa and everyone else is staying, and Latifa quickly runs out to show Rio the interesting amenities of this place. After that, she's curious about their food here. It is rice grains after husking and cooked with turmeric. It is a staple food grown in the Jagumo region. After the meal, the kids ask Rio where they can sleep. Rio initially doesn't understand what this is about, but it turns out the elders said the three of them will stay here to take care of the two of them, making Latifa a bit confused and Rio a bit uncomfortable. So Elder Yusira comes to talk to the girls about living with him. He worries these people might be uncomfortable because he is a human different from them. But rumors about him and Latifa have already spread far. To prevent the villagers from doing anything bad, this would be better. And also to help Latifa get acquainted with everyone. After that, he accepts the three of them, but also reminds them they don't need to be formal when addressing him. After that, he gets to experience spirit magic as well as how people live in this place. After that is the start of the Great Spirit Festival. Worship of the Great Tree Driaz. Meanwhile, a guy named Ray and another person enter a cave to take something important and avoid the cave's owner. It turns out this guy wants to join the Celestial Lion Corps, but he must pass the next test to be officially admitted. And it is in this action that Ray takes out an egg and says to use it to enhance the fighting power of the Corps, asking him to hold the egg because he himself has to control the bird. The young man worries their parents will come looking, but he reassures him there's no need to worry about the forest because they'll return quickly. But it seems he has another plot. At the Great Spirit Festival, Rio is welcomed as a close friend of theirs, and Latifa as a resident of the village with a blessing kiss from Lady Driaz. The villagers are very happy to witness this, and everyone celebrates together. During the night party, all village members are having a great time. But Latifa, Sarah, and Opia are all around Rio. They want to become closer friends with him. Although they seem a bit tipsy and can't really socialize well, he hopes to do better after hearing the girls exchange cups of friendship wine. The girls go to get more drinks. Lady Usura tells Rio that Latifa seems to be very happy, and Rio says she has become an integral part of the village. Rio stands up and tells Lady Usura that he is thinking of telling Latifa he will soon leave. Lady Usura says she will definitely miss him, and she feels it's a bit early, but perhaps it's the appropriate time. It's late. Ray and the man decide to rest in a forest, and they will depart to Sharn early in the morning. Ray says he will go investigate the area a bit and asks the man to keep an eye on the griffin. He gives him a strange candy, saying it protects in the worst case scenario, saying if he swallows it, he will be able to know where he is. The man takes it and swallows it. Ray tells him that if anything happens, don't worry about him and have the griffin escape. He points in a direction and says if the man goes in that direction, he will easily find him. When Ray leaves, he tells the man to take good care of the egg. A moment later, Ray is in the air. He believes it's time for the birds to come for the egg, and they really do come. Ray hopes his bait will fulfill its role completely. Then he leaves. Rio tells Latifa to go for a walk. After a short walk, Latifa asks Rio what's wrong because he still hasn't said anything to her. Rio says sorry, and they should return to the square. Rio asks Latifa if she likes living in the village, and she is very happy because everyone is here with her. Rio tells Latifa that after a short time, he will leave the village. Rio tells her that he plans to go east. She quickly asks to go with him, but he can't take her with him. Latifa asks why. He means he's going to a place he's never been and can't know the dangers. Latifa doesn't want to be apart from him, doesn't want to hear any more excuses, so she walks away. Sarah is reporting to the elders about a reaction in the barrier, and Lady Dreas has also noticed it. The elder says it seems like there's not just one or two. Sarah says she will go confirm immediately, and Lady Usura tells her to bring warriors with her. Ray finds his way to the cave and sees many eggs. He says it seems they've left without leaving anyone behind. Their pursuit ability is impressive, but it seems their intelligence is a bit lacking. He takes time to collect eggs in the cave. Yuzuma says she is detecting suspicious and old reactions, and Sarah asks her for the location, near the stream. Yuzuma says there's a person and a griffin. Sarah quickly warns everyone not to start fighting. They land near a bush where the man thinks it's Ray, but instead, the girls appear. Sarah tells the man to go quietly and follow what they say. Yuzuma asks what he's doing at this time. Sarah sees the egg in his hand and asks what kind of egg it is, and the man pulls out a knife to threaten them. He quickly cuts the rope used to tie the eagle and flies away. Yuzuma asks Sarah's permission to attack. Sarah says it seems unavoidable, so they should aim for the griffin. Yuzuma shoots, but the eagle has dodged everything, and it's heading toward their village. While he's escaping, wyverns come to attack. Yuzuma sees a flock of wyverns, and she calls Sarah. Sarah sees them and wonders why they would come to a place like this. Ophia says it could be the egg the boy had. Sarah says they can't allow him into the village. Sarah calls Yuzuma and Ophia to tell them that all of them will handle the black wyverns. Sarah says Yuzuma and the rest should take care of the other wyverns. Amma sends someone to inform Lady Usura and others. After collecting eggs in the cave, Ray says the man's role is over, and he crushes the red object in his hand, killing the man, and he falls from the eagle. Sarah tells Amma to handle the black wyvern, and Amma asks Sarah if she can borrow her Covenant Spirit Beast so she can fight alongside. She agrees. Latifa is walking in the forest, thinking about what was said to her, when an egg and a man fall down. Latifa approaches, but he's already dead. She sees the egg crack, and a giant black wyvern appears right in front of her. The black wyvern sees its egg and roars. Rio returns to the festival, but he notices people running in panic, until he sees Dominic to ask what happened. Dominic says the festival has been cancelled because a flock of wyverns is approaching. It seems Sarah and others are holding them back in the forest, but they might soon arrive here. He immediately remembers Latifa and runs into the forest to find her. The black wyvern slams Latifa into a tree, and it almost burns her with fire when Amma comes to block the flames. The black wyvern raises its foot to step on them, but Amma grabs Latifa and leaves that position. She chants a Frida, and a lion appears. Amma climbs on it and tells Latifa to step back. The lion and wolf fight the wyvern, and Amma flies high to strike the black wyvern, but it's alert enough to block both the attack and knock Amma away. Amma hits a tree and falls to the ground. Amma says at this speed, the wyverns will reach the village. The black wyvern burns the wolf and lion. While Amma is thinking of ways to buy time, Latifa has tried to distract it so it doesn't go to the village. She declares she is also a villager. The wyvern blocks Latifa's path with a tree and is about to step on her when Rio hits the wyvern, and he quickly picks up Latifa and apologizes for being late. They land, and Latifa says she's the one who should apologize for running away like that. Rio tells her they can talk later, and then he faces the black wyvern. He fights the wyvern with bare hands. The wyvern wants to breathe fire at Rio, but Rio throws magic to block the fire in its mouth, blowing off its head, and it dies. Sarah and others meet them. Sarah compliments Alma for killing the wyvern, but Alma points to Rio and says he defeated the wyvern alone. One of them says the other wyverns must have retreated because the wyvern was defeated. Sarah says wyverns are inherently timid. They won't challenge those they know they can't defeat. She turns to Rio and thanks him. Rio and Latifa apologize to each other for how they didn't handle the situation well. Latifa knows Rio might leave one day. She says she was afraid because she only causes trouble for him and thought he might want to leave. She says she wonders if she is an obstacle to him. And Rio says she is neither troublesome nor an obstacle. To him, she is his little sister. Then he tells her why he is going east, toward the Jagumo region. But he never tells her why. He says it's the land of his deceased parents. And that's why he wants to try to go there. Latifa says this is the first time Rio has told her about himself. She says there's something she wants to tell Rio and doesn't know if Rio will believe it. She says she has died once and used to be human. She has been reborn and become the person she is now. She says she was in a place called Japan before. Rio believes her because he is the same. He is also a Japanese person like her. Latifa asks if those memories come up for him, and he says yes, but he has sworn that he will be strong and survive in this world. That's another reason he wants to go to Jagumo at least once. She says she will be stronger, and she will be here waiting for him to return. Rio is preparing to leave, so the elders see him off. Dominic tells him not to talk like a stranger. He gives Rio a sword made of mithril so it can absorb his spirit magic and wrap itself in it, as well as a set of armor made from the skin of the wyvern he defeated. Its defensive power will make him think metal armor is no better than paper. Rio thanks them very much. Lady Ysera gives Rio secret medicines and magical elven potions, as well as food and drinks from the beast people. Rio says with so many items, carrying everything would be a bit awkward. The elder gives Rio a space-time bag, but he doesn't want to accept it because he feels it's very valuable. The elder reminds him that he is their close friend. He packs all his belongings into the space-time bag. Rio tells them that if the unimaginable happens and this spirit village faces danger, as their close friend, he promises to run to them. Latifa wishes him a good journey, and so do others. Then he asks them to take care of Latifa, and she also hugs him tightly. Rio has arrived in the Jagumo region, and it has been 2 weeks since he came to this area. But he still hasn't found any clues about his mother and father. The people he can see around also have black hair. A group of farmers sees him, but he says he's a traveler and is looking for relatives, wanting to meet the village chief. Then a young girl named Rooney signals that her grandmother is the village chief. Rio asks if she would mind taking him there or giving him directions, and she agrees to help him. Rooney calls Seo to follow her or she'll be left behind, and she quickly stands up. Rooney helps Rio to her grandmother's house and calls her to meet the visitor. The grandmother says a guest dressed quite strangely. Rio quickly introduces himself and says he's come because he hopes to ask her something. She asks if he comes from another country, and he replies that he has traveled through many lands. She introduces herself as Ruba, and then she asks what business he has in Jagumo. Rio says he's looking for someone. He came to this village because he heard she knows most people in the area. Ruba tells him this will be a long conversation, so they find a place to sit and discuss. Rio says he heard his parents lived in the Jagumo region over 15 years ago, and this makes Ruba ask what his parents' names are, and he says Ren and Ian. Ruba seems to have heard these names before, so she tells both Rooney and Seo to go back to work. Then she asks him to tell her a bit more detail about his parents. Rio says he heard his parents were born in the Jagumo region, but his father died before he was old enough to know his face. He lived a peaceful, happy life with his mother, but she passed away. He says coming to Jagumo is what he and his mother had promised. Rio thinks he might find where his parents lived when he travels because he wants to build a grave for them. That's the least he can do. Ruba says she knew his parents, and she can see their shadows on Rio's face. Rio asks how she knew his parents. She tells him that she is Ren's mother, and has graves for both of them. Then she takes him to his parents' graves, and he performs a memorial ritual. Ruba says both had to leave this country in secret for reasons, and there was no chance they would return home. People who knew about the circumstances built graves for both of them. Rio asks for the reason, but Ruba says she can't tell him, but the time will come when she can talk about it. Ruba asks if he wants to live in the village until that time comes, and he agrees. Ruba says all her relatives have died, and she only has Rooney by her side. Rooney is Rio's cousin, and she's 15 years old. Rio says Rooney is 1 year older than him, and Ruba murmurs a bit because he seems mature. Ruba says they should go home, but Rio says he'd like to stay at the grave a bit longer. Ruba tells him he doesn't need to be formal with her and shouldn't stay out late. She will keep his lineage secret from others. He comes home late, but Ruba and Rooney have prepared dinner for him. The next morning, Rio wakes up early with the intention of starting to help with things around the village, and he wants to start preparing breakfast. Ruba is very happy that Rio is so motivated. Rooney comes to the scene with her body not fully covered, forgetting that now they have Rio at home, and Rio turns his face away when she realizes Rooney isn't well covered. She wakes up and runs to her room as soon as Ruba reminds her that now they aren't the only ones at home. While Rio is preparing breakfast, Ruba says Rooney will make miso soup, but they don't have enough. Rooney says Kale and Shin are coming to their house. Then she points to another barrel and tells Rio to use water from there. She says they fill it every day with spirit magic. Rio says hot water would be better than regular water, so he makes hot water with soul magic. Rooney finds it amazing that Rio can do that, and she says even her grandmother can't do it. Rio says he can teach her a small trick if she wants, and she happily says yes. Seo and Shin arrive not long after. They have breakfast, and Ruba introduces them to Rio. They all eat. Seo and Shin really like the meal. Rooney tells them that Rio prepared everything, and they are very surprised. Rio tells them they can have more if they want. After the meal, Ruba asks Shin to take Rio to Dola's house, because she is thinking of having Rio work as a hunter, and Dola once told her he needs help. She says Rio also said he can hunt, but Shin doubts if he has enough stamina for the demanding job. Ruba says that considering he has traveled through many countries at his age, and he can use spirit magic, she thinks he's strong enough to do it. Shin immediately says he can even use spirit magic, but Ruba replies that Rio might be stronger than him. Shin says he will take Rio hunting, but he must ensure he doesn't get in the way. After Rio and Shin go hunting, Rooney turns to Seo and asks her why she called him Lord Rio, and she says he gives the feeling of a nobleman. Dola, Shin, and Rio go hunting, and they hunt more animals than when it was just Dola and Shin. At the end of the hunt, Dola says they will be able to give the people in the village more meat than usual. Rio killed more. The next day, a tax assessor named Saga Hayat and his people come to Ruba's village after a long time. Yuta welcomes him, and Rio also introduces himself and welcomes him. He checks the crops they have, and they invite him to eat with them, and he really enjoys it. Rio is seen without a shirt, using a sword to practice by himself outside. He realizes he is being watched. Rooney smiles and praises Rio's movements. Rooney says it's been since the day he came to town. She asks why he learns martial arts, but he says it's embarrassing to say. Both girls say they want to know more. Rio puts on his shirt and tells that when he was young, there was a girl he liked, and he wanted to become strong enough to protect her. Rooney asks what that girl is doing now, but he says they are no longer in contact. Rio says she might be with someone she loves, and he doesn't know if she remembers him. He doesn't know where she lives. Rooney says if she's alive, they might meet again someday. Rio says he's training for himself right now. At night, Seo and Rooney are sound asleep when Gon sneaks into the room. Rooney opens her eyes and sees Gon. Gon quickly covers her mouth and says he will take responsibility for what happens if she doesn't struggle. Seo wakes up and sees them wrestling. Gon advises Seo not to make a fuss, or he will punch Rooney in the face and her too. Gon hears the voice of his men when they are knocked down. A light flashes, and it's Rio. Rio meets Gon in a similar posture where his mother was killed. Gon leaves the girls to attack, but is knocked flying from inside the house to outside. Rio pins his legs to Gon until he begs him to stop. Rio sits on him and punches him in the face repeatedly until Lord Hayat comes to hold his hand to keep him from killing him. Ruba takes the girls away from the scene, and Lord Hayat seeks punishment from the kingdom, so he orders them to send a messenger. This is the second time Rio wanted to kill someone. He always has this feeling inside him. But one thing is that he has been pulled closer to Haruto without knowing it. He punches his fist into a tree and says he has turned his back on his revenge, though he is also the kind of person like that guy. The next morning, they receive notice that a messenger from the kingdom will come, and they decide that Gon and others will be detained. Rio apologizes to everyone for causing trouble for them, and Ruba thanks him for protecting Rooney and Seo. The girls also thank him. They all laugh and enjoy breakfast. Thanks to Lord Hayat, Gon and his men will be taken to the royal capital's prison. The village's transport team will be able to depart safely. Ruba thanks him. Lord Hayat says as a servant of the kingdom, only fulfilling his duty. Ruba praises his sincerity and asks for a favor to transfer an important letter to his father, Lord Gui. Ruba says she would be very grateful if he could deliver it by hand. Lord Hayat agrees to help her deliver it. Then they leave. A few days later, they arrive at the royal capital of the kingdom of Kazusuki and find a place to stay. Dola advises that they should go out with someone who knows the capital well when leaving their lodging, or they will get lost. He asks if Shin and Rio want to go out together, and both agree. Dola takes Ryo and Shin to a restaurant where he pats Shin's head and tells him it's time his emotions changed. And Shin quickly tells Dola to stop because Ryo is watching. The server brings out 3 large portions of kimura, but Ryo says he has never heard of it. Shin says he will crave it as soon as he eats it. It's an emotional experience the first time. Dola tells Ryo to eat it while it's hot before it gets soft. After the meal, Shin and Ryo walk out of the restaurant, and Shin thanks him for saving Seo. And Shin says he needs his sister to eat this dish, or they will argue again. Ryo and Seo are assigned to do an errand, and Ryo asks if she wants to go eat kamatan with him after they're done. He says her brother asked him to take her if possible. It turns out these 2 siblings used to argue because Seo didn't know how to cook that dish. Ryo says her brother just wanted to give her a chance to eat some. While they are talking, a woman selling souvenirs calls to buy a gift for his cute girlfriend. Seo quickly gets shy, saying she is not his girlfriend, and the woman says she guessed they look very compatible. She invites them to see the capital's souvenir gifts. Ryo asks Seo if she wants anything, but she is about to refuse. Ryo says she has helped him a lot, so there's no need to be shy. The woman turns to Seo and says at times like this, quietly accepting a gift shows a lady's politeness. Seo chooses one of the beautiful items to try it. The woman asks Ryo what he thinks of it, and Ryo says it suits her. When hearing the price, Seo starts to react, trying to tell Ryo not to buy it. The woman sees this and says she can reduce the price a bit, but Ryo says he doesn't like to haggle the price of a gift for a lady. The woman thanks him and wishes she had set the price a bit higher. When Ryo walks away, the woman whispers in Seo's ear that she should try her best to win him because there will be a lot of competition. A group of people is wrestling on the road. A woman is trying to help but cannot get close. Ryo comes to the scene and follows the evil guy. Ryo takes him down and saves the little girl. He asks Seo if she's okay. Then the other woman hits the remaining man and calls the little girl Momo. Ryo says there's no danger to life. The woman apologizes and says it's due to her useless incompetence. Ryo hands over the little girl and tells her to apologize to her when she wakes up. Ryo quickly grabs Seo and leaves the scene. Lord Gui is reporting to his son Hayate about how Momo was almost kidnapped, and a young man saved her and captured the culprit who quickly left the scene. Then he reminds Hayate that he said he wanted to talk privately. Hayate pulls out a letter and says Lady Ruba has delivered an important letter. Lord Gui reads the letter and asks Hayate if he met anyone named Ryo. Ryo and Seo return to meet the others who are laying down horse fur. Seo calls her brother and says kimatan is delicious. Then Shin says he will make her some kimatan when they return to the village. Shin also notices the hairpin on her head and asks about it, but she can't say. Ryo says he will go put away the things they just bought inside, and he hears someone calling him Lord Ryo. Then he turns back to see Lord Hayate. A man and his wife are bowing to him. The man introduces himself as Saguki, and the woman as Kazoko. Gui tells Ryo that he and his wife were both servants of his mother, Ian. Ryo is surprised, and his surprise is understandable. Gui tells him that his mother belonged to the royal family of the kingdom. Gui tells him about his connection with Ryo's father, Ren. It happened 20 years ago. The kingdom of Kazusuki was at war with the neighboring kingdom of Jokujin. Gen had innate talent in both spirit magic and martial arts. He volunteered to be a soldier. The king soon granted him the rank of warrior nobleman. Gui had a match with him. His skills were genuine. Gui had said he should protect the royal family members, and the royal family member that Gen protected was Iam. Iam had feelings for Gen, and that's when a ceasefire agreement was negotiated. At the ceremony celebrating the ceasefire, the prince who came as an ambassador had feelings for Iam and tried to have his servant kidnap her. Gen had prevented them from completing their plan. The prince had resented his servant being killed. If the ceasefire agreement was completed, he demanded the execution of Gen and a political marriage with Iam. Gui says just thinking about it makes his blood boil. Ryo asks if that's why his mother and father ran away together. But because the king had arranged it in secret, and the two of them had left their country, and time passed without any news or contact. But today he received a letter from Lady Ruba, and after seeing Ryo's noble countenance, he has no doubt that he is their son. Gui begs and asks Ryo if he could come to the castle tomorrow, wants the royal family to be reunited. Both of them and his own grandparents should say they will come. The next day, Ryo comes to the castle and meets King Homura and Queen Shizuku. King Homura says this is a meeting with their beloved grandson. He asks if they could be less formal, as long as they allow it. Queen Shizuku says Ryo looks exactly like Iam. Ryo replies that it is she who looks like his mother. She asks him to tell them about Iam, and General Ryo says both have passed away. King Homura says it's how they died and how they lived that they want to know. Ryo says his father died when he was too young, while his mother was a kind person who never stopped smiling. She never showed him her sadness over his father's death. Ryo says they weren't wealthy, but every day was a happy day, but she passed away. King Homura asks Ryo how Iam died. If he tells them the truth, it will be extremely painful. But the king says they want to know. Rio says his mother was killed right before his eyes. The one who killed her was a man named Lucius. He had worked with his father. After his father's death, he helped them a lot. But that day, his mother stepped outside and said she would be back soon. She also told him not to open the door. Rio eventually opened the door to a man named Lucius. He kicked Rio, and he hit his head on a chair. Lucius took out a bottle containing some liquid to make Rio drink. When he forced him, I.M. walked in and screamed. Lucius grabbed her and stabbed her to death right in front of him. He woke up and found himself in a slum. He had stayed and lived there as an orphan until he was 7. He explained an incident where he had saved an important person of the kingdom. He was allowed to attend an educational institution run by the kingdom, where some students were treated a bit harshly, but some people treated him well. He had attended the school until he was 12, and then set out for the land his mother had promised. King Homura says both his parents must have hated them deeply. He thinks his mother was grateful to them for being able to marry his father. He says there would be no reason to hate them. The man who killed his mother is the only one he will never forgive. King Homura asks if he hopes for revenge. There was a time when that was all that kept him alive. But revenge doesn't create anything. If he meets that man again, King Homura says if he follows the path of revenge, what he will find is hell. Rio says he will continue, will not hesitate to dirty his hands. King Homura says he won't stop him, but he wants him to fight with Gui, because he will need strength if one day he has to face Lucius. Gui and Rio return home to see Momo, Gui's daughter, and he is the one who saved Momo. Gui and his wife are very happy and surprised. The match between Gui and Rio, with Kyoko as the referee, the king and queen are also present. Both Gui and Rio begin to demonstrate excellent sword skills, until Gui decides to chant the most hidden skill, one sword no slash, to attack, but he defends himself with his spirit magic. The match victory belongs to Rio. The king and queen find his performance very impressive. The king asks if he has any wishes. He has a cousin living in the village where he stayed, wants to tell her about his lineage. The king says they will trust his judgment, and he thanks them. The villagers have returned to the village, but Rooney cannot find them. Seo calls Rooney to look up at the mountain, where he tells his parents that he cannot run away anymore. To live to protect what is precious, he will accept the ugliness inside himself and move forward. On the night of the same day he arrived at the village, Ruba and Rio told Rooney who Rio really was. Rooney was surprised that Rio was her cousin. It was hard to believe, so she joked about it. Ruba said Rio belonged to the royal family. She added that Rio's father had been recognized in war and was elevated to the rank of warrior nobleman. Rooney apologized for her rudeness and bowed to Rio when she learned of his identity. Rio was not used to and uncomfortable with it. He told her not to do that. Rooney said he was royalty, and Rio said his mother might be royalty, but he was not. Rooney should treat him as before. She asked if she could call him Rio, and he said they would continue their normal relationship even though they were cousins. Calling her Rooney was a bit awkward, so she wanted him to call her more intimately. Rio agreed, although it would take some time. Rio told both of them that he was thinking of leaving the village, and Ruba said he would be missed but couldn't do anything else. She asked if he would return to the land where he grew up, and he said yes, but there was also a place he wanted to visit on the way. Rooney asked if he would return to this village, and he said he would come back someday as long as he was welcome. Rooney said of course he was allowed, and the grandmother added that he was a member of the village. He could return anytime. Rooney thought Rio said he would visit somewhere. Perhaps someone was waiting for him. Rio said they weren't blood related, but there was someone who considered him as a brother. Rio met Rooney and Seo at their place. Then he mentioned that he hadn't greeted everyone since returning. He wanted to go around and meet people properly. After that, she noticed the expression on Seo's face. A girl came over and asked him why he was talking to Rooney like that, as if it was normal. Rooney tried to tell them that they both lived in the same house. The other girls were jealous, saying they wanted that too. He continued his daily activities in the village, and he was enjoying his time with the villagers. At the farm, Rooney called Rio to tell him that she had planted trees in her area. Just as he had requested, Rio praised her and told her to help others who weren't done. Dola interrupted and said Rooney was hardworking, so she would make a good bride, and Rio agreed with that. Both Rio and Dola burst out laughing when she said they shouldn't talk like that. Then Rio turned to Seo and asked if he could help her, but she quickly continued planting trees and said it wasn't necessary. Rio told her to make sure to remember everything. He wanted to supervise everyone in the village on what he had taught. Seo heard this and stopped. Rio said it all depended on whether it went well or not. She asked Rio if he was leaving the village, and he confirmed it. He hadn't told anyone else. But this autumn, around the time the harvest festival ends, that's when he was thinking of leaving. She asked if he would stay nearby and return to the village often. But he said he was planning to travel around the country, so he didn't know if he could return frequently. He felt it was better to inform her in advance. Seo was worried but didn't want Rio to notice this. So she said that dirt from her hands had gotten into her eyes. Rio created water spirit magic and gave it to her to wash her face. Rooney asked her what happened, and Seo told her the same thing she told Rio. Then she said she should complete her part, and Rooney said she would help. Seo went home that day and burst into tears until Shin came home and saw his sister crying. So he asked her what was wrong. She said she was fine and would make dinner. But it was clearly not dinner time yet. Shin thought it was Rio who made her cry, so he was about to walk out in anger when Seo told him not to do anything. It's just that Rio would leave the village. Shin quickly walked out of the house to go to Ruba's house to find Rio. Upon arrival, he saw Rio and bowed to him, begging him to stay in the village. He knew what he was saying was selfish, but he shouldn't leave the village. Seo came there and apologized for any trouble her brother had caused them. Both apologized, and they returned home. Finally, it was the harvest festival. Everyone was happily enjoying their moment, and Ruba invited Gui's family to join them. Gui decided to challenge anyone who had confidence in their skills, and he said rank and size meant nothing. While some people cheered for Gui, some people pushed Dola onto the stage to challenge Gui, though he didn't want to. Gui won at the end of the challenge. Rio made kamatan for everyone. Rooney invited Momo to eat kamatan. Rio thanked Kyoko for her help today, and she said it was the least she could do in return. Seo asked if she could have a moment with him. They moved away from the party area. Rio saw the hairpin and said she was still using it. Then she went into the main conversation. At this point, not saying it would only be a loss. She said she loved Rio. Rio felt guilty, but he couldn't return her feelings. She asked if it was because he would leave the village. You've chosen the right answer, but that's not the whole reason. She said Rio should take her with him. Rio said that was impossible. She had trained her body and practiced spirit magic every day for the past 6 months, would do anything possible to not hold him back. Rio asserted that was not the issue at all. He apologized again and couldn't return her feelings. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she said it was okay. Even if Rio never looked at her, at least he should let her stay by his side. She grabbed Rio's hand, but Rio felt guilty and let go, then left. As he left, he noticed Shin was watching, so he stopped and silently said sorry. Rio prepared to leave. He thanked both the grandmother and Rooney, but she said he didn't need to set out when it was still dark. Rio said he had said goodbye to everyone in the village yesterday, and this would be a long journey. Rooney said he could come back home anytime. Rio left as they wished him a good journey. Seo was waiting for Rio at the village border. She recalled what Lord Gui had said when Rio left her in tears. She wished Rio all the best and told him to take care of himself. And he hoped she would too. She would work hard, would try her best, so he must try his best too. Rio told her he was truly happy that she came to see him off. Both shook hands and wished each other goodbye until they met again. Rio flew back to meet the subhumans and Latifa. Latifa ran to hug him tight, welcoming him back. He told the elders that he had many good experiences. He explained everything to them. Rio told Latifa that his grandmother and cousin said they wanted to meet her when he told them he had a little sister, and she said she also wanted to meet them. The elder asked Rio how long he would be able to stay with them. At most, a few months. He promised Latifa he would ensure to return sooner. Elder Yusura asked Rio if he lacked anything during the trip. Rio said he still had many supplies, but while he was traveling, a thought had occurred. He hoped she could lend him her wisdom. He was thinking of building a house that could be carried in a space pocket. Dominic found that interesting, but Yusura said he would want a house that could be placed without needing a foundation. Dominic said he would have to use spirit magic to prepare. The elder said once he liked this, he wouldn't return for a while. Yusura told Rio to leave the house matter to Dominic. He should spend all the time he could with Latifa and others. After the discussion with the elders, he met the girls in the room. Sarah asked if he had a long talk with the elders. He said he felt relieved to see everyone seemed as lively as usual. Sarah said the elders must have been surprised to see how much he had grown. Rio said that's right because it had been 2 years. Ophia said Rio had grown so much that Amma and Sarah seemed to have become quite shy around him. But both denied that. Rio told both Amma and Sarah that they had become more like mature ladies, and they were very cute. He turned to Ophia to say that she had become more beautiful, and her calm temperament had increased. Then Latifa asked if he wanted to take a bath with them, and the girls shouted of course not. Rio woke up to find himself next to a naked woman. He screamed very loudly, causing the girls to rush in. The girls were surprised at the scene. Now no matter how much they rushed in, they couldn't escape the guilt. Rio was trying to explain, but who would believe him now? All the girls were present, asking who that woman was. He was sure it was a misunderstanding. The woman came closer to Rio, which made the girls very curious. Sarah said it was a misunderstanding. Rio simply slept with a naked woman, that's all. The girls saw what they shouldn't have seen, and she apologized. Latifa asked who the strange girl was. Rio woke the woman up to explain the misunderstanding. The girl woke up and explained she was a spirit who had made a covenant with Haruto. She reminded Rio of what Lady Driaz had said. Rio asked how they had made a covenant, but she didn't know either. Rio said when he was young, it was this woman who showed him how to use spirit magic. Why did she suddenly appear here? But she didn't know either. Rio asked what happens when a covenant spirit first appears. Sarah said the spirits they covenant with don't have human form, so they didn't know. Rio turned to the woman to ask her name, but she now had no name, wanted a name that Haruto would give. She existed because of him. Ophia noticed the woman had called him Haruto, but Rio said he would explain later. The woman knew about Rio, knew everything about him. Rio asked if she meant everything about Haruto. She asked Rio if he wanted to know about the former Haruto, saying he didn't need to worry, promising not to tell others. She wanted to know how she should address him. He smiled and said she could call him by either name. She wanted a name. Rio said to give him a little time. Rio felt this happened too quickly, so he didn't know what to do. Sarah asked if he could seek advice from the elders and Lady Driaz. Amma said Lady Driaz was a humanoid spirit. She might have some advice. Rio turned to ask the woman if she wanted to go with him. But she couldn't go naked like this. She stood up, and a beautiful dress covered her. Everyone in the room was surprised, and she said she had woven the dress from Odo and Mana. She changed dresses, and Rio didn't know when the name Asia came out of his mouth because she looked like his former girlfriend. She liked that name and said in the ancient language, it meant spring. Rio said when looking at her, the image of spring seemed very fitting, and she liked it. Amma was the first one who wanted to welcome her and asked if she should treat her like an older sister, and then the others followed suit. In the council room, they decided to inform the elders that Rio's spirit had awakened, but somehow the spirit had lost her memory. Rio was preparing to explain his covenant with the spirit when Lady Driaz appeared. She felt a powerful spirit appear in the village. She recognized that spirit, and both introduced themselves. Lady Driaz said humanoid spirits all retain their memories. But Asia seemed to remember nothing, and she was Haruto's covenant spirit. This made everyone ask who Haruto was. Rio admitted that he called himself Haruto in the Shira region, and he was wanted. Lady Driaz suggested they determine Asia's type of spirit, asking Asia to tell which element she was best at, and she was good at all elements. They were all surprised to hear that, deciding to organize a match between Rio and Asia. To understand how much power Asia had, Rio explained to Asia that their match would begin when the stone touched the ground. Then the battle began. Asia's fighting technique was very fast, and Rio recognized her movements. He asked if she was copying his technique. The battle was intense. Both used different spirit magic. One of them, Amma could recognize, was used to defeat the wyvern. Rio and Asia released large tornadoes to the extent that Lady Driaz had to end the match before it affected the village. From Asia's performance, she was indeed good at all elements. Asia only used a small fraction of her power, and as she currently was, Asia was not safe. Lady Driaz said she would impart knowledge about spirits to Asia. Elder Sudo came to welcome Asia on behalf of the people. They organized a party to welcome her. Rio took her around the village to see unique things. Elder Dominic took everyone to the house he helped Rio build. It had the most convenient facilities possible. Elder Dominic told Rio that as long as the foundation was established with spirit magic, the house could be erected anywhere. Seeing Rio thank him, he patted him lightly and told him not to act like a stranger. Elder Dominic had completed the house he could carry. Rio thought he needed to show respect to the elders. It was time for him to set out. Latifa asked him when he would leave, and he said the day after tomorrow. Elder Dominic said he would inform the other elders when they entered the new house. Rio noticed Sarah's mood, and he felt guilty for the sudden departure. Sarah told him to spend some time talking with Latifa. At night, while in the bathtub, he thought that he had been thoughtless. He had focused on training since Asia awakened. He hadn't talked much with Latifa. Just then, Latifa walked in with a towel with the intention of scrubbing Rio's back, but she was shy about not wearing clothes. He allowed her to scrub his back, and she said she used to be Japanese. Her name then was Endo. Rio asked why she decided to talk about this. She said Asia called him Haruto. He told her it was his alias in the Shira region. Rio told her that his name was Amakawa Haruto when living in Japan. Latifa said she used to ride a bus, and there was someone she wished was her brother, but the bus had an accident. Rio now could be sure both reincarnated from that incident. She said Rio was a wonderful brother, but Rio didn't feel that way because he was no longer by her side. Latifa hugged him and told him to make sure to return to the village. Rio promised to come back. She was very happy to hear that and asked if there was any place that needed more thorough washing. There was one place where washing would be a bit tense. Rio said there was something he had to do in the Shira region, and Latifa told him not to talk about that. The next morning, Rio prepared to leave the village for Shira. He was sent off by everyone. The elder gave him a teleportation crystal, allowing easy return to the village. Elder Dominic told him it only worked one way, so it couldn't take him back to where he came from. They considered him a close friend, and to let a close friend set out with nothing would dishonor the spirits. Elder Pseudo gave him a magical item, allowing him to change his hair color as desired. Since he was a wanted person in Shira, the magical item would be useful. Lady Driaz reminded Asia not to forget what she had taught. Rio told Sarah to take care of his little sister, but Latifa said she was no longer a child. They all wished him a safe journey. On the way to Shira, Rio said there was something to do in Shira, but before that, he needed to meet someone. And Asia said Celia, as if she knew everything. Rio said he hadn't been able to contact her after the first letter. Back at Bircham Academy, Celia was on campus, thinking and wondering if Rio was safe. While she always kept the only letter she received, suddenly Charlotte appeared. She was surprised, but he asked why she didn't call him husband. Celia said she was too shy to do that. Charlotte hoped she would change over time. Then one of Charlotte's guards called him to see something, and then he left. Rio and Asia found their way to the royal capital of Bircham, but it seemed more crowded than before. To avoid being noticed, he used the magical earring to change his hair color. They decided to stop at a shop, buy something, and take the opportunity to ask why there were so many people coming and going. The woman said it was because there was a noble wedding parade tomorrow. Many people had come from outside the royal capital. Rio was curious, so he asked which noble house, and she said it was the Duke Adu's house, one of the major noble houses. Rio told Asia that he would go to the academy, but Asia said she would go with him because her spirit form could be useful. At night, when they reached the academy, they landed on a roof with some guards on duty. Rio took them through a window that he broke into but couldn't, so Asia quickly used her spirit form to appear on the opposite side to open it from within. They found their way to Celia's laboratory, but it was empty. Rio wondered if she had changed laboratories because he knew she wouldn't leave the academy. Rio said there was a bit of risk, but if there were researchers in another room, they could use illusion and ask. Asia told him to leave that to her. Rio found another laboratory in the academy. When the man in the laboratory asked, Asia appeared behind him and touched him to hypnotize him. Rio walked in and asked him where Celia was. He had business with her, and the man replied that she was in the royal palace. The man told him that Celia was about to marry Lord Charlotte of the Duke Adu's house. Rio seemed shocked when he heard the news. Rio was surprised that Celia was marrying Charlotte Abo. He asked how that could happen. In the recent conflict, the kingdom of Bircham had lost to the Bajoja Empire. The house of Duke Abo began peace negotiations. The power and prestige of the royal family had been lost. Duke Hugin's faction was blamed. They had fled the royal capital. The house of Duke Abo had consolidated power and had targeted the house of Count Clash. Asia asked if the house of Count Clash wanted this political marriage. The man didn't know because there were no details. Asia released her hand, and he fell asleep. Outside the building, Asia asked Rio what he would do. He had to meet Celia and ask her directly, but Celia was in the castle, and their defense system would be even tighter than the academy. Asia said she would use her spirit form. Rio said the spirit form was a mass of Odo and mana. Inside the castle was set up to detect suspicious magical power. Asia said she could see the magical detection barriers. When she left, Rio said she and Celia had never met before, but she knew what she looked like. Rio was counting on her. Celia and her father were having dinner. Her father felt guilty for not being able to see her earlier. She told him not to mention it. Charlotte interrupted them, calling him father. He told him to rest assured about the ceremony being completed. Charlotte proudly beat his chest, boasting about tomorrow's grand ceremony. Count Clash expected security to be perfect. He said he had gathered the best in the kingdom. Charlotte was even more concerned about this father-in-law. Strange rumors had spread from the court. Count Clash and part of the nobility had secretly contacted Duke Hugin. Count Clash refuted these baseless slanders. He said his faith in him had been shaken. Clash said he would never betray the kingdom. Charlotte told him not to worry. The marriage was part of protecting his position. He said his father-in-law would be under the control of this family. It sounded like a threat to Clash, but he had no other choice. They raised their glasses to toast the peace and prosperity of both houses. Rio was high above the castle. Looking at the castle's defense system, it was being prepared for tomorrow's ceremony. Asia told Rio she had found Celia. She guided Rio to break into the inside. Celia was in her room thinking about how she and her father hadn't seen each other for so long. To keep her father and the Clash house safe, she would become Charlotte's property. Opening a drawer to take out Rio's letter and wishing to see him again. She remembered the moment between them, about to burn the letter to end everything when there was a break-in. He took off his hood and used the magical earring to transform back. She was very surprised again. Rio said he had returned as promised. She dropped the letter and hugged him tightly. Celia knew it wasn't a dream. Both completely remembered each other. Celia told Rio that he had grown taller. She hadn't changed much, but she said she had become more feminine. And to him, she was always beautiful plus more adorable now. She punched Rio in the chest for talking like that again. She said Rio had become handsome, strong, and brave. She was very happy that he had returned safely, wondering how he got into her room, asking Rio to tell her about his journey. Rio heard she was about to marry Charlotte Abo, asking if the wedding was what she wanted, then apologized for the rude words. Celia had agreed to the marriage even if it was Charlotte Abo. That guy had a grievance with him, perhaps related to her family's circumstances. Celia said she had reached the age where she couldn't think about her research forever. Charlotte Abo was polite and kind to women. Rio wanted to say something, but she interrupted and asked if he could take her somewhere and live the rest of his life. Rio didn't know what to say. Celia said that was just a joke, so forget it. Rio should leave because the caretakers would soon come. She had a busy day tomorrow and a lot to do. She was very happy to see Rio before the wedding and told him not to come to the ceremony because it would be embarrassing. Quickly leave and be careful not to get caught. She pushed him out. In an instant, he was gone. She was very happy to see him again as promised. But she didn't want Rio to be involved in this in tears. Rio told Asia that he couldn't see the love from Celia, and she asked what he intended to do. Rio didn't know but wanted to know about the motive for this wedding. Asia said she would help him, but he apologized for always letting her help. She would always be by his side. He could come to her anytime. On the wedding day, Ray visited Charlotte Abo to congratulate him. He wanted to welcome Ray properly. Ray told him not to bother. If he was too friendly with him, some people wouldn't be happy, so he just wanted to come here quietly. Lord Charlotte told Ray to come to his house after the ceremony ended. Ray said tonight was his first night. He would visit another day. Ray suddenly sensed a powerful spirit. He was distracted until Charlotte called his name. Ray said he would come to the ceremony room early and wait. Charlotte called his guards to show Ray the way. Ray felt that presence had disappeared. Celia looked at herself in the mirror, hearing someone call her name outside. Charlotte saw her and was mesmerized like a hungry tiger wanting a deer. He introduced her to his wives, telling his wife Tennisina to take care of the rest, and left. Tennisina came close to introduce herself and wanted to make clear from the start. She said she had higher social status than them, but when she married Charlotte as his seventh wife, she was only below them, not allowing any disrespectful behavior. Celia accepted those things, hoping the wives would treat her well. Tennisina said as a bride of the family, she should cheer up. Then the maid announced Princess Christina had arrived. Celia told her maid to let her in. Tennisina was not happy because the maid interrupted her. But Celia apologized because it was the princess. At that moment, the princess apologized to Celia for coming suddenly without notice. She complimented Celia's wedding dress. Tennisina turned to the princess and welcomed her, telling her to come in and rest. The princess hoped to speak privately with Celia. Tennisina quickly apologized for her behavior and led everyone out. The princess came to congratulate on behalf of her parents. Then they sat and had tea. She continuously praised her professor, asked if Celia had any problems, but she said no. Just worried yesterday so didn't sleep well. The princess thanked her professor for her help to be able to go out like this. The princess had been confined in the palace too long, and the surveillance of the Duke Abo faction was quite strict. The princess said the incompetence of the royal family was the cause, and the Floria side being captured abroad due to Duke Eugen must have been very painful. Princess Christina said that faith in the royal family's power was lost, and the bad consequence was Celia's wedding. The princess felt guilty for all of this, but Celia said the wedding was her decision, no need to apologize. Princess Christina felt bad for taking away Celia's smile. When studying at the academy, she had admired and respected Celia, who looked very happy then. Not like now like a bird caged. The princess swore she would do everything in her power to help Celia regain her smile. Celia thanked her and prayed the two princesses would be reunited. Charlotte and Effet were having a conversation. Effet's command of the forces, being the strongest warrior in the kingdom. His skills had earned him the title of the King's Sword, but Charlotte had command authority, so Effet had to follow his orders. Effet only always completed his duties. Charlotte told him not to brag and left. The wedding between Celia and Charlotte Abo began. People all over the kingdom praised this wedding. People saw Celia's dress through the shadow of the carriage, calling her the Silver Bride. Charlotte said that wasn't a bad title, showing how beautiful Celia was. He thought Celia would be his, looking forward to kissing each other to seal the vow. He signaled the soldier to cheer for the family's reputation. The people of the kingdom just followed along. Charlotte said, one day this kingdom would be his, and Celia would be his wife. When the carriage approached, Asia informed Rio. Thanks to Asia, Rio remained calm. Asia communicated with Celia, telling her to look to the right and see Rio in the crowd. Celia didn't understand why he was there at this time, crying and saying Rio was the only one she didn't want to see. Charlotte saw Celia crying, but she said it was due to overwhelming emotions. Charlotte didn't expect she loved him so much, saying she should be dignified because people were watching. She looked back, but he had already left. She tried to talk to Asia but couldn't, thinking it might all just be an illusion. The carriage stopped. Charlotte stood up and reached out to help her step forward. Celia thought she would be a doll from this moment and prepared to take Charlotte's hand when soldiers shouted a warning about an intruder. The intruder was Rio. Some soldiers tried to stop him, but he used his feet and fists to beat anyone in his way. A soldier on horseback ordered the soldiers to retreat to both sides and form a single wall. They were not to let him get close. Soldiers used spears pointed at Rio, but he released his magic to sweep them away. The mage team controlled him and chanted, but Rio dodged everything and flew high over them. And then he ordered some soldiers to protect the bride and groom. The soldier chanted physical enhancement, and they prepared to attack. Celia was surprised, but Lord Charlotte told her everything was fine. It was just a pre-ceremony performance. They were the elite of the elite in the kingdom, selected with extreme care. But Rio had defeated all the soldiers. Before Lord Charlotte realized it, he flew towards him and punched him in the chest with his fist, and he fell to the ground. Rio pulled out a knife and acted as if aiming at Celia. Baron Clash didn't want his daughter to be hurt. He wanted to move, but a soldier stopped him. He told her to let go because he couldn't believe the country's security. The soldier told him to stay calm. Duke Abo also tried to move, but a soldier stopped him. Rio talked mentally with Celia. He apologized for the disruption, wanting her to explain the situation. He said her keeping silent would help a lot. She asked Rio what was happening, and Rio said he was using telepathy. She just needed to focus her words in her mind, and her voice would reach him. Lord Charlotte was lying on the floor, asking what he was looking for, but Rio kicked him and said he had a grudge against him. He threatened to crush him under his feet. Celia told him to stop and made him promise not to kill anyone. Afet ordered the soldiers to take the guests to the temple. Rio told Celia they didn't have much time, so she should let him explain. He asked her will once more, but she wouldn't answer. So Rio knew she was being threatened by the Duke Abo's house. Rio said whatever her wish was, it would be fulfilled. She said Rio was being arbitrary, and he agreed with that because she was very precious to him, and he owed her a lot. He didn't want to just stand by and lose what was important to him. He would regret it for the rest of his life. Once something is lost, it will never return. But if it hasn't been lost yet, there's still time. He saw a future where she would be trampled. He asked her once more, would the wedding make her happy? She said that if she put her emotions above all, she might cause trouble for others. Was that the right thing? But Rio knew, if this wedding was truly right, she wouldn't have that face. He begged her not to give up. She asked what he would do if she said she didn't want to marry. He would take her away and run. Her father would not be involved in this. They were surrounded by an army. She told Rio they would catch him. Rio told her not to worry about that. He would fulfill her wish. She told Rio to take her away. Rio confronted Lord Charlotte and said he was stealing his bride in front of everyone. Then grabbed Celia and ran. While Celia pretended to scream as if kidnapped, Lord Charlotte ordered the entire army to pursue. Afet told them not to disrupt things, but Charlotte ordered them to capture Rio. Soldiers ran after him to catch him, but he flew over them to their astonishment. Charlotte cursed the army as incompetent. Afet asked Charlotte if he saw Rio's jumping ability when he lunged. The mage team chanted to attack him again, but he put Celia down and created a barrier to block it. Ray thought he was using some kind of magical item. He wondered who that person could be until he remembered. The boy who cut the head off the giant monster in the forest with spirit magic. He thought he had returned. He said he had become stronger since the last time he saw him. He launched an attack at Rio, but Rio controlled it and hit the attack to the floor. It exploded, making people scream, thinking he had died. But when the explosion subsided, Rio was holding Celia in his arms, and he ran. Charlotte ordered them to stop firing because he didn't want the attack to affect Celia. Afet told the soldiers to listen. He told them that the knights in the air were pursuing. He ordered the forces to spread out into a net surrounding the capital, turning to Vanessa and telling her to handle security for the wedding venue, and coordinate between the leaders of each unit. Charlotte called Afet to ask who authorized him to take command. He had let the raider escape with his bride-to-be. Afet asked if he knew who the rebel could be. Charlotte recalled the rebel saying he had a grudge against him. Afet said it seemed there could be many candidates, but Charlotte told him to shut up, pursue the rebel immediately, and bring him back. Afet said that was the intention and ran after the rebel. The situation had become an interesting thing for Ray, but with the protection given to him as an ambassador, he thought he shouldn't sneak away from here. He happened to be very interested in Rio and the spirit that had never appeared. As they drove, Celia complained that Rio was too fast, but Rio told her to try to endure, and he didn't want to deal with the Griffin unit. He would go a bit faster. She said Rio had become an impressive boy. He thanked her and asked if she was more familiar with the speed. She said if he could go faster, then do it. Rio thought if he kept running like this, it would take time to shake them off. Now they needed to get down from the rooftops, and they would meet again later. Celia asked what he meant. Then he told her that there was someone helping, and that person was the girl who had first telepathically communicated with her. He flew down from a tall building. He called Asia, and she appeared. Rio handed Celia to Asia, and Celia asked what was happening. Rio said he would be the bait and buy time. Rio told Celia that both would take this opportunity to escape the royal capital together. He promised to meet them again later, and Asia would explain herself to Celia on the way. The knights in the air found Rio, but not Celia. The knight in the air said the alley he exited was a dead end. They should inform the ground teams. He told one of them to shoot a flare to call for reinforcement. Rio thought everything was going according to plan. All that remained was for Rio to attract them. The knights in the air launched an attack at Rio, but none of them hit him. Then he decided to go between the buildings, where he met the soldiers on the ground. He fought as best he could, but didn't kill anyone, making things more difficult. Just then Afet came and said he would arrest Rio. Rio recognized him because he was the one called the King's Sword. Afet ordered his men to step back. More blows came from Afet to Rio's knife, pushing him back. Rio thought there was some kind of powerful magic formula enchanted on the sword Afet was holding. The battle continued as Rio not only used his knife, but also launched a kick. Afet attacked powerfully, but it could only end on Rio's knife, and this time Afet was pushed back. Rio had a chance to turn his blade towards Afet, but he decided to back away. Afet asked why he didn't use his blade, considering it as Rio underestimating him, so he wanted to end it. He accumulated more energy into his sword and struck it down to the floor, causing destruction with the surrounding buildings. Afet's men were searching for Rio after the explosion, but he was nowhere to be found. They reported back to Afet. Afet said if he took the full force of the blow, then this life would only be crippled, but he didn't feel it hit him, and there was evidence that he had escaped into the alleys. He told his men to search the surrounding area to make sure. Asia and Celia had escaped from Afet's men. Celia asked Asia if Rio was okay, and she said Rio would arrive shortly. Rio met them, and she ran to hug Rio despite almost falling. Rio told her everything was fine. Celia saw Rio's clothes, and she asked if he was injured. Of course, there was no problem. He thanked Asia. Rio asked if she still wanted to go back. She quickly said no, but she was just thinking it didn't feel real. Celia said for a moment she thought her life was over, but Rio had saved her, and he was by her side. Thank you for kidnapping her. Celia asked what they would do next, and Rio quickly told Celia that he had something to do, but he wouldn't let her suffer. Celia said she lacked experience and was incompetent, but she hoped Rio would treat her well. Rio said he hoped she would treat him well. She also mentioned that they should talk more to make up for the past time. Suddenly Asia said it was coming. There were 4 different fire streams stretching from the ground to the cloud stone. All disappeared into the clouds. Asia begged Haruto to help and save them. Some girls found themselves in a space where they couldn't contact anyone because there was no phone signal, and they were kidnapped by some men. They were held in a vehicle, but Rio came to the scene to rescue them from the men. He asked if there was anyone else, and unexpectedly met his former lover there. The story begins by telling about Amakawa Haruto's childhood. He was close to a girl named Ais Mihezu. They grew up together and gradually came to see each other as special. But life likes to challenge couples, and because Haruto's parents divorced, they had to part ways. Before saying goodbye, Mihezu sadly asked Haruto not to leave. Haruto promised that when he grew up, he would return and even propose to marry her. To fulfill that promise, Haruto studied hard and was accepted into a prestigious high school in the city where Mihezu lived. Haruto also worked part-time to support himself in this city because his father wouldn't allow a long-distance relationship. On the opening ceremony day, Haruto saw Mihezu standing in front of an alley. Just as Haruto was about to call Mihezu's name, a young man named Takahisa approached her first. Takahisa tried to persuade Mihezu to go with him. At that moment, a girl named Satsuki appeared and teased Takahisa. It turned out that he had been walking with Satsuki earlier, but had already positioned himself next to Mihezu. Satsuki had noticed Takahisa's clingy behavior toward Mihezu since middle school, after which they left. The 3 of them went to meet Takahisa's 2 siblings. His younger sister named Aki had just entered middle school, and his younger brother named Masato had just started 6th grade. They planned to gather to celebrate the new school year. As they were about to go eat, suddenly 2 magical circles formed under Satsuki and Takahisa's feet. It transported them to another world, and Mihezu, Aki, and Masato who were nearby were also pulled in. At that moment, Rio and others saw 6 different colored light beams from the sky. Ashia, feeling a connection with Mihezu, asked Rio to save the people at the location she indicated. Mihezu, Iki, and Masato were transported to a grassy field. They were very surprised by what was happening. Mihezu tried to determine her location using the map application on her phone, but there was no signal. Suddenly, a group of bandits appeared. But moments later, Rio appeared at the transportation site. He could sense traces of spatial magic there. He found Mihezu's phone and wondered what had happened. Rio discovered a slave trader along with many bandits and mercenaries, so he approached to ask what was going on. saying that he was looking for someone who had dropped this object. The merchant immediately claimed not to know anything. Suddenly Rio heard cries for help in Japanese coming from inside the wagon. Rio told the slave trader that it was the voice of the person he was looking for, and the person inside was calling for help. Rio asked what their intentions were, as he could understand their language, and the merchant realized this. Highly likely that their plan would be exposed, he ordered his men to beat Rio up. Rio observed their movements, recognizing that they were used to fighting as a group. Despite this, he easily defeated them. The remaining guards didn't dare to resist. The merchant was so frightened he wet himself. Rio met with Aki and Masato and spoke to them in Japanese. Aki asked why Rio knew Japanese. Rio said he would explain later and asked if anyone else had been captured. Masato pointed to another wagon. Rio went there, opened the carriage, and was extremely surprised. Somehow his former fiancée was here, but he decided not to acknowledge knowing her. Rio had them go with him. While walking, Rio reported to Ashia and decided to meet when the sun was setting. Mihezu thanked Rio, introduced herself, and asked his name. Rio said that for certain reasons he was using the name Haruto. Aki seemed upset when she heard that name. Noticing Aki's discomfort, Mihezu signaled by calling her name. Learning that this girl's name was Aki, Rio was immediately stunned and realized this was his younger sister from his previous life, 3 years younger than him. But he hadn't seen her since leaving with his father when he was young. Masato also introduced himself as Sendo Masato, Aki's younger brother. Rio remembered very clearly that he didn't have a younger brother, and furthermore, Masato didn't have the Amakawa surname. This meant that Haruto's mother had remarried Masato's father. Then Aki also introduced herself as Sendo Aki and apologized for her late introduction. They arrived at a place that Rio thought was suitable for placing his house. When Rio was about to invite them in, Ashia and Celia appeared. Celia immediately came close to Rio and asked if he was okay. Celia recognized right away that they were the people Ashia had asked to save. Rio introduced them, and Celia also introduced herself. They were still amazed to see someone who could fly and were also confused by Celia's language. Rio told them that this was Miss Celia, his benefactor. Since Celia didn't understand Japanese, Rio had to interpret. Seeing this, Ashia kissed Celia's forehead and then Mihezu's. She did this to create a temporary communication channel between the two, helping them understand each other despite their different languages. Ashia could understand Japanese because she knew what Haruto knew. Rio invited them into the house, which looked quite spacious with 2 floors. Rio suggested they take a bath before continuing their conversation. While bathing, Celia revealed that Haruto's real name was Rio, and Ashia wasn't human but a spirit who had made a contract with Rio. Celia didn't know the details because she had just met them as well. Meanwhile, while preparing food, Rio told Masato that he and the others seemed to have been transferred to this world. Masato felt this was like a game and realized that without Haruto, he and the others would have been in danger. After the girls finished bathing, Celia wore Aki's sportswear that she had just bought for the opening ceremony. Celia found the outfit easy to move in and comfortable since they had no clothes to change into. Rio suggested that tomorrow they would go shopping for daily necessities in Amon. Initially, Mihezu worried because she had no money. Rio assured them not to worry about money. After eating, they continued their conversation. From Mihezu's explanation, Rio said it seemed like the 3 of them had been caught up in summoning magic. Mihezu asked if they could return to their era. Rio didn't know, as their case was different from his. He was reincarnated into this world after dying in a traffic accident. Celia connected Mihezu's story with the 6 pillars of light she had seen. It could be related to the legend of the 6 sage gods. According to it, 1,000 years after the war between gods and demons, 6 holy stones would shine. Then pillars of light would shoot up to the sky, and heroes would appear, wearing the costumes of fierce and holy gods to replace the 6 sage gods. They would lead all humanity. Rio knew that story, but looking at Mihezu, Aki, and Masato, he didn't sense anything special. He felt they were not heroes. Mihezu said that before being transported, she had been with 2 other people who had been transported earlier. Mihezu asked if those 2 had come to this world. Rio couldn't guarantee that, but he thought it was likely. Mihezu expressed concern for their fate. She and the others had been lucky to be rescued by Rio. Unexpectedly, Ashia became sleepy and asked Rio to go to bed. Rio planned to stay a bit longer to talk, but she immediately fell asleep on his chest from exhaustion. Celia panicked and asked what they were planning to do. Ashia calmly said it was to recharge magical energy, something she always did by sleeping with Haruto. Celia didn't allow it with the excuse that Ashia hadn't bathed. Rio tried to explain this misunderstanding but realized it was hopeless. Mihezu didn't know what to do and offered to clean the dining table. They continued talking to clear up the misunderstanding. Ashia fell asleep on Rio's shoulder. Rio explained that Ashia was a spirit who needed magical energy to sustain her life. He was the contractor, becoming a bridge to share magic. Celia felt jealous, but still claimed she wasn't jealous at all. She made the excuse that sleeping together could negatively influence the younger generation. Therefore, Ashia chose to sleep with Mihezu. She sensed a large source of magical energy from Mihezu, although not as much as from Haruto. Although she didn't understand much, Mihezu was happy to be able to help. Ryo showed them their bedroom. Mihezu slept with Ashia, Aki in the room next door, and Celia in the second floor room opposite Ryo's room. After being alone in his room, Ryo couldn't believe he would meet Mihezu in this world. He wondered what would happen if he told Mihezu that he had Haruto's memories. Ryo pushed that thought aside. He now wanted to live as Ryo, having determined to bloody his hands to avenge those who killed his parents. Celia came to see him, asking to talk for a while. She wanted to know many things that she couldn't ask in front of others. She asked what he had been doing all this time, whom he had met, where, and more importantly, the meaning of his previous life. Ryo told about Mihezu and others who were related. About his previous life, Ryo admitted having Haruto's memories. Memories of a world similar to Mihezu's, which is why he could understand their language. Those memories appeared on the first day he met Celia in the slums. Before he died at the age of 18, Celia also felt that when she first met Ryo, he seemed like a mature child. Ryo said that now he is Ryo, a 16-year-old teenager. Celia said she was curious about her father's situation. At least she wanted to let him know she was fine. Ryo suggested sending a letter and invited her to buy supplies at the Jika Trading Company. But Celia would have to use an alias to avoid her identity being exposed. In the capital of the Bircham Kingdom, Ray met with Charlotte, asking politely about Charlotte's kidnapped fiancé. Charlotte believed the kidnapper had died after a Fet's attack, but was angry because they still hadn't found Celia's whereabouts. Charlotte felt someone was helping her. He had blocked the capital and conducted checks. Ray knew that Ryo, along with that spirit, was still alive and had left by erasing all traces, admiring the boy's courage. But he didn't tell Charlotte, and their conversation shifted to the topic of heroes. What had been prophesied had become reality. The kingdom of Bircham also had a hero appear, currently being handled by Charlotte's father. Ray asked, "Doesn't the kingdom of Bircham have 2 holy stones?" Charlotte said it was with Princess Floria and Duke Huguenot, where heroes might also appear. Charlotte was angry, considering them traitors who had sided with the kingdom of Gala. Regarding the kingdom of Gala, Ray remembered Lai's lot Christina, who had attended Charlotte's engagement ceremony. Ray said that girl was very talented, but Charlotte thought differently. To him, she was just a 15-year-old girl. Ray could only smile, as talking to a fool was difficult. Ray didn't tell Charlotte about Lot's existence, along with the Jika Trading Company, which made her just as troublesome as the Huguenot household. Elsewhere, in Baron Jodin's territory, a feast was held to entertain a hero, with Duke Huguenot in attendance. Baron Jodin, Jonah, and Princess Floria were present. The hero who appeared here was also from Japan, named Hisasaki Sakata. His attitude was very arrogant, considering himself the center of attention because he was called a legendary hero. Before being transported to this world, he had been reading a web novel that, according to him, had cliché motifs. When he woke up, he immediately saw many knights. He was quite frightened. Princess Floria and Gusta Huguenot came close and introduced themselves. Hearing about a princess and a duke, Hisasaki felt this was exactly like the beginning of an Isekai story. Princess Floria said that based on the prophecy, 1,000 years after history, a hero would appear under the Holy Stone. The sword he was holding was proof of being a hero. Hisasaki was also surprised why he was suddenly holding a katana. But when he saw this cool katana, this fool began to fantasize about power. Seeing the princess's attitude toward him, Hisasaki realized that heroes had high status. Immediately changing his attitude, he acted arrogant because he felt he was the center of the universe. He understood the language of this world. Back to the present, he asserted his position, threatening that if this was a kidnapping, he had power, but it had been unjustly taken away. The princess could only bow her head and apologize. Hisasaki continued to push, making Princess Floria uncomfortable. Stia was angry with his attitude and was about to remind him. But Gusta immediately scolded his son and apologized to Hisasaki. Gusta said the kidnapping was a misunderstanding, then announced the current situation. Back to Ryo, they were preparing to go shopping, with Aki and Masato staying behind. Ryo instructed them to try their best not to leave the house, and then they left. Ashia carried Celia while Ryo carried Mihezu, but had to ask permission first. Mihezu marveled at the scenery. When asked if she was afraid, Mihezu said no, as long as she was with Haruto. Then she felt embarrassed. Meanwhile, Celia asked Ashia how much she knew about Ryo. Ashia said almost everything because Haruto's memories flowed into her due to their connection, and their souls were also spiritually connected. Hearing this, Celia felt jealous. Ashia said that thanks to Celia, the first person who treated Haruto well, Haruto had gradually been able to trust others. Before entering the city gate, Ryo gave Celia and Mihezu earrings that could change their hair color. They went straight to the Jika Trading Company, guided by Chloe. Rio went out to find information but couldn't find any useful information about the kidnapping, nor any information about Satsuki and Takahisa. When he returned, Rio saw Mihezu choosing underwear. Rio was about to leave again, but Mihezu asked him to wait. Mihezu chose clothes for Rio, and the others also felt they suited him. Back to the capital of the Bircham Kingdom. Lai's lot was still trapped in the capital due to Charlotte Abo's blockade order. Her maid announced that they still needed time until the restrictions were lifted. Lot knew Charlotte did this to control information about yesterday's incident, but she was happy because this would ruin the Abo family's reputation. On the other hand, Iris was worried about Celia because she was an old friend of hers. Meanwhile, Rio and the others had returned, buying many clothes, including for Aki and Masato. Then Rio said he hadn't found information about Satsuki and Takahisa. But according to the legend of the 6 sage gods, heroes had indeed appeared. According to Rio, Takahisa and Satsuki could be 2 of the 6 heroes that had appeared. Aki was sad because she couldn't meet Takahisa. The girl really wanted to meet Takahisa. Rio understood her feelings and suggested they first learn the language and knowledge of this world. For future plans, Rio wanted to talk first with people he could trust, namely the spirit villagers. Mihezu helped Rio cook. Aki noticed Mihezu seemed close to Rio, feeling a bit surprised because Mihezu usually wasn't comfortable with boys. Looking at the 2 of them, Celia also wanted to learn how to cook. Rio then suggested Celia try cooking tomorrow. The next day, Rio headed to the spirit village using a one-way instant transportation item. Before leaving, Rio asked Ashia to take care of them. The moment Latifa sensed a large magical distortion, she immediately ran over, certain it was Rio. As soon as she saw Rio, she hugged him tightly. Sarah and others also rushed over, eager to meet Rio but hesitant. Rio clearly stated the purpose of his trip was to discuss with the elders. In brief, Rio met with the elders. He informed them about the enormous magical energy that appeared on the Shira continent, originating from 6 pillars of light. There was a possibility that the shape of those light pillars was a type of space-time magic, a kind of summoning magic in the Shira region. A major role in the war between gods and demons was the appearance of 6 heroes. The elder asked why Rio thought those heroes were summoned from another world. Rio mentioned he was currently taking care of 3 people from that world. However, they weren't heroes. They were in a position unrelated to the light pillars, caught up by 2 people and trapped in the spatial distortion. And most likely, those 2 were the heroes. Rio was asked if he understood the language of people from another world. That was the purpose of coming here to tell this story. Rio admitted he not only understood, but could also use it because he was also a resident of that world in his previous life. Rio promised to explain that later. Currently, Rio asked if they believed his explanation. Latifa hadn't expected Rio to reveal that. Though surprised, the elders all believed him. Rio made a request. Could the 3 people he just mentioned temporarily live in this village? He wanted to return those 3 to their world, but it would be very difficult to move if he had to take care of them. One remaining person was his benefactor who was forced to marry someone she didn't want, so he rescued her. The elders agreed to take care of them, but required telling them to promise to keep information about this village secret. That evening, Rio talked with Latifa, apologizing for telling about his life without informing her first, which was to explain to the elders. Latifa asked if she should tell about herself. Rio said Latifa didn't need to force herself. Rio told her about the girl he liked in childhood when he was still Haruto, and his sister who had been separated from him because their parents divorced. They were the ones he was taking care of. But he didn't tell them he had Amakawa Haruto's memories, since he felt their spirits were still unstable. Rio asked Latifa not to tell them about his previous life. The next morning, Rio asked permission to leave, but he returned by flying as usual. Latifa still clung to him, not wanting to part. At the castle of the Gala Kingdom in the capital Gardos, Lai's lot reported details about the Bircham Kingdom to the king of Gala, Franny's. He asked Lai's lot to go arrange invitation letters for them and the hero. King Franny's wanted to host an event to introduce the hero of the Gala Kingdom. When informed that the name of the hero of the Bircham Kingdom was Sakata Hizasaki, Lai's lot was slightly surprised as it was a name from the previous era. Lot asked about the name of the hero who appeared in this kingdom. The king said her name was Sumura Satsuki. The king felt she was from the same hometown as Sakata Hizasaki because of the surname before the first name. From her name, Lot was even more certain that both came from Japan. King Franny's asked his daughter to take Lai's lot to the hero's place. They went to where Satsuki was. In the forest near the city of Emond, Rei ordered monsters to search for people with magical energy, as many as possible in the forest, and bring them back alive. If there were witnesses, kill them immediately. At Rio's house, Celia was helping Masato learn the native language, while Aki helped Mihezu cook. Mihezu only cared whether Rio would come home early. Eki, hearing this repeatedly, grew tired with a sad expression. Aki worried about the future. She should have started a new life in the new semester, but was transferred to this world instead. Moreover, without Takahisa and sister Satsuki, and perhaps she would never see her mother and others again. Mihezu tried to comfort her by hugging her. Aki was curious why Mihezu didn't seem emotional. Mihezu said she was also worried, but with Aki, Masato, Ashiya, Cilia, and Haruto here, she could feel at ease. Aki seemed upset, not liking that answer. Aki asked if Mihezu didn't want to go home. Mihezu said there was no need to rush. Haruto was trying very hard, so trust him now. Then Aki asked Mihezu about Haruto. Aki noticed Mihezu wasn't used to talking with boys, but she seemed very familiar with Haruto and even appeared happy. Mihezu said Haruto was very good and reliable, and his name was also similar to Haruto. Aki became angry because Mihezu still remembered her brother. Aki couldn't accept Haruto being compared to the brother who had abandoned her. Aki asked to go outside to cool down. Mihezu apologized, saying she didn't mean it that way. As Aki went outside, she realized she was wrong to raise her voice at Mihezu. Although Mihezu wasn't at fault, Aki concluded that Mihezu still liked Amakawa Haruto. Mihezu went to find Aki, and right then, they saw 3 monsters in front of them. The monster could infiltrate the barrier created by Ryo. Fortunately, Ashiya quickly realized it. She announced that the monsters were attracted by the magical energy from the house's barrier. The black monster that Ashiya had attacked earlier had revived. Other monsters approached. At the same time, other monsters approached Mihezu and Masato. In this crucial moment, Cilia came to protect Mihezu and Aki. Those monsters revived and were about to attack again when Ryo arrived and felt a hardness when he punched the monster. Ryo asked Ashiya to handle the other 2. He would deal with the black one. When finishing off that monster, it spoke as if begging to be killed. The monster left behind a magic stone. As for Ashiya, she had also defeated the remaining 2. Aki apologized, feeling it was all her fault for going outside. Mihezu also blamed herself for saying something that offended Aki. Ryo didn't mind and shifted the topic to the delicious smell from Mihezu's dish, so they decided to eat. The monsters created by Rei returned, bringing many unconscious people who could use magic. Rei noticed that one group didn't return and wondered who had defeated them, as according to him, it wasn't easy to defeat a pack of enhanced undead. It turned out these monsters were corpses revived by Rei, and he would create more from the people he had captured. Ryo returned to the spirit village with everyone. Recognizing this presence, Latifa immediately hurried to meet Ryo. Mihezu, Aki, and Masato were amazed to see that spirits existed. Moreover, they were all cute. Sarah welcomed them to the spirit village. Then she and others showed reverence to Ashiya and spoke in formal language. Seeing this, Mihezu was naturally stunned. Ryo explained that the spirit villagers worshipped high-level spirits who could manifest as gods. Aki and Mihezu felt they had been impolite by calling Ashiya a Chan. Mihezu immediately apologized, but Ashiya didn't mind as she didn't like formality anyway. Cilia introduced herself to Latifa, and then said she had heard about Latifa from Ryo. Cilia was attracted to Latifa's tail. She asked permission to touch Latifa's tail. Latifa used Japanese, immediately surprising Mihezu and others. Latifa also admitted that she had memories of her previous life. Like Haruto, Latifa offered to help them learn the language here. Ryo hadn't expected Latifa to admit it and asked if she was okay. Latifa had already decided and had told Sarah and others. Latifa did so because she knew the feeling of worry when in an unfamiliar world. Moreover, now she was Haruto's sister and wanted to help him. Afterward, they introduced themselves to each other, and Sarah led them into the village. The villagers seemed to keep their distance. Aki asked about this, and it was explained that the villagers here kept a distance from humans. Then a child grabbed Mihezu's hand. Mihezu smiled and greeted the child. The child whispered to Latifa, saying Mihezu's uniform looked strange. Latifa told Mihezu, who was wearing a school uniform because she felt it was formal attire to meet the elders. Mihezu asked if it was weird, and Latifa said it was a cute outfit. Mihezu told the child that she liked its ears because they looked very cute. From then on, the spirit villagers began to approach and talk with humans until they became friendly. Latifa noticed the girl that Haruto liked when he was young. She thought Mihezu was very beautiful. Mihezu noticed Latifa's gaze and asked what was wrong. Latifa shyly asked if she could call Mihezu Wanachin older sister. Mihezu happily agreed and also asked if she could call her Latifa-chan. After that, a welcome party was held. They hadn't expected to be welcomed like this. The elders welcomed Ashiya respectfully and also welcomed Mihezu and others. After Dreyas appeared, the party began. Later, they were led to their accommodations, and the girls bathed together. Since it was an open-air bath, they could see the stars in the sky. Aki and Mihezu thought the scenery was beautiful. But then Aki became sad, wondering if they would ever be able to return. Mihezu said certainly someday they would return. Meanwhile, Masato asked why brother Haruto was so strong. Haruto said there was something he had to do. And to do that, he had to become strong. Masato also wanted to become strong to protect Mihezu and Aki. The next morning, Cilia saw Ryo practicing with his sword. They talked afterward. Rio said Mihezu and others had integrated well here. So Rio told Celia to send a letter to her father for peace of mind. Celia thanked him but asked if this would trouble Rio since he wanted to return Mihezu and others to their world. Rio said he had decided he wanted to help Celia, just like helping Mihezu and others. So after sending the letter, he would go to Jordania to find information about the heroes. Celia asked him not to hesitate to ask for her help. After all, she was a mage with the largest amount of magic in Burcham. The next day, they asked permission to leave. Mihezu gave him a lunchbox she made to thank him for everything. She promised that someday she would repay Haruto's kindness. Rio said this lunchbox was enough, and he liked Mihezu's cooking. Masato promised him he would be strong until he returned, after which they departed. At Baron Joden's mansion, Lot had come to deliver invitations to the feast for hero Hisasaki, Princess Floria, Gusta Huguenot, and Jonah. Hisasaki was immediately captivated by Lot's beauty. His eyes were always directed at Lot as she spoke. He thought Lot was not only beautiful, but also had a cute voice. He only refocused after Princess Floria called his name. Being enchanted by Lot's mind, he decided to attend. Meanwhile, Rio and others had arrived at the territory of the Burcham Kingdom. From a distance, they could see Celia's mansion, where there were many guards. Celia mentioned there was a secret passage into the mansion in the garden. Only family members knew about it, and they entered through that path. After entering, Count Clary immediately realized someone had broken in. He wondered what had happened. No outsider should have been able to access the secret passage. Celia placed the letter in a room in the secret passage. Just as she closed the door, her father arrived. The Count saw the letter from Celia, which apologized to her father and mother for worrying them. But please be at ease because now she was living peacefully and safely beside someone she trusted. She promised to return and explain everything. Finally, she expressed gratitude for her father's care in raising her. Though sad, Celia said that was enough. After reading the heartfelt letter, he wanted to find his daughter, but the Abo family's guards prevented it. Celia thanked Rio, and she herself had left her family for a boy. After that, they headed to Jordania. Meanwhile, Lot was planning to return to Amon by airship, but was forced to make an emergency landing in the nearest city because a black dragon appeared. Lot's airship landed safely. Fortunately, the black dragon didn't see them. Lot praised the captain's quick decision. Gusta Huguenot's magic airship also made an emergency landing not far from where they were. While unloading cargo, Baron Bosa, the ruler of this area, welcomed Lot. It turned out they knew each other. Not long after, Gusta Huguenot's group arrived. There was Jonah, Princess Floria, and the hero Hisasaki. They were also heading to the Gala Kingdom and intended to stop by Amon, but were forced to land because of that black dragon. Gusta Huguenot invited Lot to talk, asking Baron Bosa to prepare a temporary place. Rio, Ashia, and Celia arrived in Jordania, the territory of Baron Joden. While Celia and Rio were sightseeing, Ashia disappeared. It turned out she went to get snacks alone. Rio apologized to the vendor and asked how much it cost. But surprisingly, a drunken man had already paid. The vendor invited Rio and Celia to eat as well, saying not to worry as the drunk man was covering it. He had just received a large sum of money from the departure work of the hero's ship, so he wanted to share. Rio asked about the departure of the hero's ship. The vendor said he heard there would be a welcome party for the heroes, but he didn't know information about that hero, only that the hero here was going to Gala. Lot began the conversation with Gusta's group. The hero didn't know about that dragon species. Lot explained that dragons are creatures that bring disaster and are beyond human control. To prepare for the worst, Lot suggested leaving this city and considering evacuating the residents. Baron Bosa asked to leave the evacuation of people to him. Lot asked about Gusta Huguenot's side. Before Gusta could answer, Hisasaki asked a similar question. Lot would return to Amon because she was the ruler of that city. But because of the dragon, she planned to return by land, which would likely take a whole day to get back. Lot asked them not to worry, as her maids were trained to fight. Jonah asked Hisasaki not to interfere too much because it would only cause trouble for Lot. Hisasaki acted like a hero, but looked like a fool who would go with her. As a hero, he couldn't ignore this 1,000-year situation. Gusta Huguenot told Jonah they couldn't ignore the wishes of a hero, couldn't order a hero. Lot objected, saying they couldn't let a hero from another kingdom face danger for her. Hisasaki still tried to find a way to be by Lot's side. He said that he was a hero, so he would help Gusta Huguenot and others with conditions. He could do it and emphasized that if he alone fled to a safe place, it would be against this fool's aesthetic values. Gusta Huguenot wouldn't blame Lot even if something unexpected happened. Princess Floria also couldn't oppose the wishes of hero Hisasaki, making this fool appear even more smug, saying that if something dangerous happened, then Lot could trust him. While talking, he showed off the holy weapon of a hero named Yama Tenizuchi. Although surprised to see that weapon, in her heart, Lot thought, "What kind of name is that? Showing off." The next morning before departure, someone came to see Lot. It was Raymond, the knight captain of Gusta Huguenot, assigned to protect today's journey. Raymond recognized Iris and sent his condolences about what had happened to her family. Iris thanked him for that, saying she was lucky to be adopted by Mistress Lot. Gusta Huguenot and others arrived. Then they began their journey. In the leading carriage were Lot, Floria, Hisasaki, and Jonah, while Gusta Huguenot and others were in the second carriage. In the middle of the forest, Iris ordered the carriage to stop and prepared for battle. Chloe immediately activated the security system on the carriage. From both sides, they saw many monsters, amazing the knights. Iris felt strange about why there were suddenly so many monsters. She asked Lot and others not to leave the carriage. Then Iris ordered the knights to prepare shields. A hailstorm came down on them. Lot's 3 maids, Natalie and 2 others, created a magical barrier to block the carriage direction. During that hailstorm, from the front and back also appeared many monsters, numbering in the hundreds. Iris told Captain Raymond to leave the front to her. Captain Raymond agreed, and she began to act. Liza's other maids also began to move, facing the monsters on both sides. It turned out all this was done by Ray. He was watching from the sky, with the purpose of capturing Liz because he considered her an obstacle. Ray saw that Iris was an extraordinary person, and Liza's other maids also proved reliable. Ray still saw a gap for himself to succeed. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Hisasaki was the most panicked person because he couldn't see outside. He asked what was happening. Liz asked this fool to calm down, saying that the people outside were all combat experts. Hisasaki was still not reassured because with so many knights, they still hadn't won, and there was no explanation from outside. Princess Floria asked him to trust them. Hisasaki said he couldn't trust strangers. Even siblings in the house punch each other, so only a fool would trust like that. Princess Floria bowed her head sadly upon hearing that. Lot could only sigh at the attitude of this fake hero. To comfort Princess Floria, Liz pretended to be scared and held the princess's hand. Princess Floria became happy again, while that guy was trying to get Jonah to show off. Suddenly there was a shock, which made the useless Hisasaki even more worried. He couldn't bear it anymore, drew his holy sword, and went outside. Jonah tried to stop him, but Hisasaki was both stubborn and arrogant. Lot was angry at this hero's attitude. With no other choice, Lot also went outside. She asked Princess Floria to stay by her side. Liz also used a magical barrier, wondering why there were so many monsters living in the forest. Hisasaki and Jonah were still in front of the carriage, seemingly seeing this situation. Hisasaki dared not help. Hisasaki was so scared he almost wet himself, not knowing how to win. Lot said she was an amateur, so she couldn't predict the situation. The useless guy was still afraid but acting like a hero. Liz asked Jonah to take care of Princess Floria. She would go help the wounded. This fool wanted to stop her but had no ability. While treating the knights, Iris came close and asked about her situation. Lot asked for a report on the situation. Iris informed that they were surrounded from 3 directions. She had handled the front direction. The 2 flanks she assigned to other maids. Now she would go to the back. Seeing Iris go to the back, Ray thought his diversion plan had succeeded. Captain Raymond admired Iris's ability, cutting down monsters with just 1 slash. Iris asked Captain Raymond and others to help. She would handle it alone here. Seeing Iris's effectiveness earlier, Captain Raymond complied. Unexpectedly, a minotaur appeared and roared. Hisasaki along with Princess Floria and Jonah were all afraid, because this was a monster considered legendary. It appeared in the war between gods and demons. Unexpectedly, 2 others appeared from behind, making the useless hero only know fear. Iris wanted to go to Liz, but many monsters blocked the way. Moreover, where she was, there was also a minotaur. The minotaur at Liz's location punched the carriage. Everyone was stunned seeing that, including Hisasaki, who became even more afraid. A minotaur was now heading towards Princess Floria. The princess was so scared she couldn't move. Luckily, Lot saved her in time. This time the minotaur swung its sword, but Rio appeared and with 1 clean sword stroke cut off its hand. Everyone was amazed looking at the person who had saved them. Floria remembered Rio's image, who had also saved her before. Rio came close, saying he would help Lot's maid with his identity. Rio had no time to explain. As another minotaur approached, Rio channeled magic into his sword and finished it. Everyone was once again amazed. How could such a monster be sent flying so far? Meanwhile, Princess Floria looked with admiration. From the mist, the last minotaur appeared and attacked suddenly. In such a situation, Rio could still dodge, then afterwards slashed the minotaur's body to pieces. The other monsters, seeing this, became frightened and ran away. The soldiers cheered joyfully. Gusta, Lot, and Princess Floria came to meet Rio. Rio also didn't expect to meet Princess Floria here. As for Floria, her eyes welled up when she saw Rio. Liz thanked him for saving her and everyone. She introduced herself as Liz Lot Christina, the ruler of Amond. Rio introduced himself as Haruto, hearing which Floria was surprised. The person she was looking for was Rio, but this was someone else. Lot continued to introduce Floria and Gusta Huguenot. The princess still felt this was Rio, so she probed him. Haruto lied that they had never met, which made Princess Floria sad. Seeing Princess Floria not as usual, Gusta Huguenot asked if Haruto was a noble from another country. Haruto said he was just a wandering swordsman. Hisasaki appeared, boasting that he was a hero. Hearing his name, Haruto was certain Hisasaki was also from Japan. Since Hisasaki was a hero, Haruto spoke politely to him. This made Hisasaki even more arrogant. Then he invited Jonah and Floria to go to a safe place. Haruto felt Hisasaki spoke normally because he was a hero. Perhaps there was some kind of automatic translation magic for heroes. Floria still contemplatively looked at Haruto. Actually, she wanted to talk to him, but Hisasaki called her. Haruto wondered if Floria recognized him as Rio. Jonah seemed not to recognize him. Haruto offered to help repair the carriage. Iris slightly doubted that the carriage could be repaired, while Lot agreed and asked Iris to go with him. The reason Haruto helped them was because Iris was Celia's friend. When they were flying, they saw Lot's group being attacked by monsters. At that time, Iris alone was destroying monsters until 3 Minotaurs appeared. Because of the dangerous situation, Rio saved them, asking Ashia to take Celia to a safe place. After learning that Iris served Lot, Haruto wanted to build a good relationship with her. Haruto began to repair the carriage, easily cutting off the upper half. Lot asked if that was a holy sword grade like an artifact. Haruto confirmed that his sword was actually a spirit sword. While Haruto was repairing the carriage, another maid prepared drinks. Talking about how cool Haruto was, all three of them were attracted to Haruto. Haruto had finished repairing the carriage. Lies thanked him. Cosette came, bringing a special drink for Haruto. Haruto thanked her, but didn't know what to call her. Cosette immediately introduced herself in a noble manner. That surprised Chloe and Natalie, even Iris and Lot. Haruto said that those who worked for Lot were all elegant. Hearing that, Lot couldn't hold back her laughter, making Haruto confused. Their path was blocked by the Minotaur's large sword. Gusta Huguenot didn't know how to clear it away. Hisasaki appeared awkwardly. Hisasaki could lift and throw it away. Receiving praise from the soldiers and Gusta Huguenot made him even more arrogant, starting to show off. Haruto just watched from afar. Admiring Hisasaki's strength came from his holy sword. Unlike Hisasaki, Haruto lifted the sword lightly thanks to his own physical strength. Hisasaki walked past Haruto with an expressive face. Finally, Haruto was invited to go with them. Haruto still felt uncomfortable sitting with them. Gusta Huguenot said this was a thank you for saving their lives. Lot promised to express gratitude when they reached Amand, and she even bowed her head, causing Haruto to ask Lot to raise her head. Hisasaki, irritated by that scene, told Lot that someone like her shouldn't easily bow her head. Lot could only sigh at Hisasaki's attitude. Meanwhile, at the spirit village, Latifa was teaching Shira language to Mihezu, Eki, and Masato. All three had mastered the Shira language. After finishing their studies, Masato went to play with villagers. Mihezu and Eki practiced spirit techniques with Ophia. Mihezu quickly mastered what Ophia taught, while Eki struggled. The girl wondered why she couldn't do it. Was it because of talent? Ophia invited her for tea, but Eki was still thinking about it. Asking permission to go for a walk, Aki went to the altar where Drias appeared. She saw a child playing house, reminding her of her childhood with her brother. They also played house. Eki had been very happy during that time, but Haruto and his father had left. Aki didn't want Haruto to go, but her mother kept her. Aki said Haruto was a liar who had promised to always be together, and Haruto could only apologize. That evening before dinner, Masato still hadn't returned from playing. While waiting, Eki asked about Haruto and Latifa's first time here, immediately making Sarah and others feel guilty. Latifa smiled and said there was a bit of an issue. Ophia said at that time they had made a mistake. Sarah explained that outside the village was a protective barrier. If anyone entered, they would be detected. Rio was resting there, but Ra and others had misunderstood. Seeing Latifa being put to sleep with spirit magic, they thought someone had kidnapped a villager, so finally, they detained Rio. Latifa said Rio did that because she always had nightmares then. Ophia and Amma told that when Rio slept, he looked like he was crying, calling the name Mikan. Mihezu and Eki were immediately shocked when they heard that because it was the nickname that Amakawa Haruto used to call Mihezu when they were young. Sarah and others were surprised by Mihezu and Eki's reaction. Right then, Masato appeared, carrying a large fish. Sarah, Amma, and Ophia went to see Mihezu in her room. She was practicing spirit techniques. They came to talk about Eki. Meanwhile, Eki was bathing with Latifa. Aki asked about Latifa and Haruto's story before coming here. The story was painful for Latifa, but she still told it. Latifa said that previously she was a slave in the Bircham Kingdom. Haruto had freed her and brought her to this village. Here she had been able to live peacefully. Eki apologized for asking something unpleasant. Latifa didn't mind. She thought that because of that, she had been able to meet Haruto. All the difficulties she had experienced were like what she had to go through to be able to meet Haruto. Therefore, she wanted to help Haruto. Aki understood that. She told that she had once been betrayed by someone she loved when she was young. She had been very sad and lonely. But one day, her mother remarried, gaining a new older brother and younger brother, Takahisa and Masato. Takahisa was very good and had helped her a lot. Now she wanted to help him, but she was angry because she couldn't use spirit techniques, and also felt frustrated remembering the past. Latifa comforted Aki, telling her to express all her worries. She would listen to everything. From then on, Aki began to practice diligently. The girls wanted to give Aki a gift. Returning from practice, Aki saw Ophia wearing the school uniform she had borrowed from Mihezu. Ophia was undeniably cute. Latifa also wanted to try it on to show Haruto, but Mihezu's outfit was too big for her. Mihezu came, bringing apple pie, Aki's favorite dessert. Aki asked why so suddenly. This was a special gift for Aki because she had been working hard. Aki lent her clothes to Latifa. Latifa was naturally cute as well, and she also wanted to show Haruto. At the Joja Empire, Emperor Naito Jojo was sitting on the throne looking outside with a bored expression. A person approached him. It turned out to be Lucius, saying he heard there was an issue in Bircham. If the Abo house collapsed, it would be a problem. Naito wasn't worried about that. He had sent messengers there. Rei's purpose in coming here was to meet Lucius. He asked Lucius to help implement his plan. He had executed his plan, but there was a quite troublesome factor. Even Minotaurs couldn't compete. Rei assigned the task of capturing the second princess, Floria Bircham. Haruto and others had arrived in Amond. There, Haruto said goodbye to them, going to the inn that Lot had prepared. Lot announced that tomorrow morning she would send someone to meet Haruto. Haruto then went to meet Cilia and Ashia, who had arrived in Amond earlier. Haruto recounted what had happened. He also mentioned that in the group were nobles from the kingdom of Bircham, Princess Floria, Gusta Huguenot, and Jonah from the Jeffon house. Cilia asked if Princess Floria and Jonah recognized Haruto. Haruto felt the princess seemed to have recognized him, but was still safe because his hair color was different. Worried about being exposed, Cilia suggested they should leave Amond. But currently, Haruto wanted to build a relationship with Lot. There was a possibility Lot knew about the hero of the Gala Kingdom, who was the one Mihezu and others were looking for. Cilia agreed but suggested Haruto shouldn't be careless because Lai's Lot was a smart person. Haruto said that tomorrow he would meet Lot, so he asked Cilia to teach him social etiquette. At Lot's mansion, Gusta praised Iris. Lot wondered if that useless hero should have helped in situations like that. Gusta said he could, but his combat experience was lacking. But when Hizusaki lifted the Minotaur's large sword, that strength came from the power of the divine weapon similar to the Holy Sword. But that weapon could only be used by a hero. After a long discussion about heroes, Lot concluded that Gusta saw heroes as nothing more than symbols of power. Their conversation shifted to Haruto, who had defeated 3 Minotaurs in the blink of an eye. Gusta asked for Lot's opinion about him. From his way of talking and solemn gestures, Lot thought Haruto might be hiding his identity, or perhaps his noble title had been lost. Gusta wanted to learn more, so he asked permission to join tomorrow's meeting. To show gratitude, Gusta allowed his knights to investigate the forest about the recent appearance of monsters. Lot had intended to investigate, as many adventurers in the city had recently disappeared. Therefore, this was perfectly reasonable help during this period. In the middle of the city, Stia and Afonso, each going with a village girl, took them to a famous restaurant. They boasted about themselves, causing trouble at the place because the room with a garden view was already reserved by other guests. Afonso arbitrarily told the receptionist to ask the guests to change rooms, offering to pay more money, but the receptionist couldn't comply, making Afonso angry. Haruto was relaxing, eating with Cilia and Ashia when he heard noise outside. When about to go outside to check, Stia opened the door. The waiter immediately apologized to Haruto. Stia and Afonso knew Haruto was the person who had helped yesterday but didn't recognize him as Rio. Stia and Afonso introduced themselves as knights. Clearly, Haruto recognized them because both had always caused trouble for him before. Afonso said he wanted to use this room. After seeing Ashia and Cilia had finished, Haruto invited them in, and Afonso, attracted by Cilia and Ashia, immediately blocked the exit, inviting Cilia and Ashia to eat together. Haruto politely declined. Seeing this, Afonso pushed further. Despite knowing Haruto's sword skills were good, he still looked down on Haruto, considering him a commoner. Stia had signaled Afonso to stop. The waiter also asked them not to cause trouble for other guests. Haruto signaled Cilia and Ashia to go, asking permission to leave, but was blocked by Afonso, who tried to threaten Haruto, saying he could be punished for being disrespectful to nobles. Haruto calmly replied that violence was strictly restricted by the laws of this region, and asked if they dared to act and then go to prison. Afonso became even more angry, deciding to attack. But fools usually have bad endings. Stia told Haruto to release Afonso. Haruto refused because this fool might attack again. Stia attacked and slipped because Haruto dodged. However, they still tried to attack Haruto until he knocked them unconscious. The incident was reported to Lot by Ashia. She sighed at their attitude, although she didn't want to be seen as an arrogant noble. Gusta was also angry with his sons and Afonso's behavior, meeting both disappointing children. Previously, they had also caused trouble and were given chances to change, but because they didn't change, Gusta had revoked Stia's inheritance rights, shocking his son. Afonso objected, thinking it was excessive just for a fight with a common knight. Huguenot immediately said Rio was more talented than useless people like him. Afonso was angry hearing that and wouldn't accept it, even telling a duke like Huguenot to take back his words. Gusta mocked them for attacking as a group, but still being defeated. Gusta gave one chance. Afonso would be embarrassed when facing his father if he continued like this. The son immediately agreed, and Gusta ordered them to join the investigation team in the western almond forest. If they found something and accomplished a feat, Gusta promised to support Afonso. But if there were no results, Afonso would be under house arrest in Jordania. Then Gusta ordered them to apologize to Haruto. The next morning, Lot personally came to see Haruto. She said Gusta Huguenot wanted to apologize to Haruto, asking for anything if they truly wanted to. Haruto only wanted to write a letter about this fight. To resolve everything satisfactorily, Lot invited him to lunch at her house, allowing him to bring Celia and Ashia. Haruto said his two friends were still tired, so he would come alone. The meeting took place. The content of the agreement letter was favorable to Haruto, and Gusta didn't mind. After finishing, Gusta Huguenot apologized for his son's fault, asking permission to give them a chance to apologize. When Haruto agreed, both were called in and immediately apologized. Afonso was really angry but had no choice. Afterward, Haruto was taken to the place of the princess and hero Hisasaki for a feast. Floria showed joy while Hisasaki remained arrogant. In this feast, Lot served a rice dish different from Earth's and had been improved. She named it Jisoto. Then they asked Haruto about his age and when he started adventuring. Haruto said he was currently 16 years old, adventuring alone since he was 11. He told that his parents had passed away before he began adventuring. Everyone there was silent when hearing that. The princess asked why he adventured alone. Haruto said he wanted to meet people dear to his parents. Lot and Gusta Huguenot both offered to become sponsors for Haruto. Haruto only thanked them without saying more. Hisasaki said Haruto was like a new hero. Being flattered like that, Haruto was humble, saying he was no match for a real hero. That made Hisasaki even more arrogant. He said that no matter how hard Haruto tried, only real heroes had the level and power that was invincible. Their conversation mentioned the upcoming hero introduction feast. Lot finally revealed the name of the gala hero as Sumura Satsuki. Haruto immediately knew that was the person Mihezu and others were looking for. The investigation team had begun their work in the almond forest. Afonso there was still angry because he had to kneel and apologize earlier. He wanted revenge on Gusta. His mouth was strong like that, but he was no different from a coward, only knowing fear. Unexpectedly, Lucius appeared at the spirit village. While practicing, Mihezu thought of Haruto, still thinking about the story of Haruto talking in his sleep, calling her nickname. Feeling such a coincidence was impossible. Then she focused again and succeeded in mastering her exercise. Sarah and others came, asking why Mihezu practiced so diligently. Although Mihezu said it was just for fun and peaceful living thanks to Haruto, paper can't wrap fire. They all knew this was for Haruto. Mihezu immediately said she didn't want to continue being a burden to Haruto. They praised Mihezu for quickly becoming proficient, even being able to control it. Meanwhile, Ashia was feeling life when Celia brought tea for both to enjoy. And Celia was proud that her tea was good because Rio had taught her. At this time, the wind rose and Ashia was absent-minded, but she had no intention of telling Celia. In the almond forest, Lucius turned out to be with Ray. Lucius knew they were knights from the Bircham Kingdom brought to escort Princess Floria to Amond. The knights were amazed that they were discovered so easily. Their leader asked who Lucius was. He didn't answer but turned back to talk to Ray. Ray ordered not to kill anyone. Afonso wanted to quickly fight with Lucius. The leader stopped him and ordered to surround, but before they moved, Lucius attacked first. Afonso thought this was his opportunity. He would kill this person and make Huguenot ashamed. This guy was faster, already behind the soldiers. The other knights were toyed with by Lucius. After being bored, he then defeated them easily. Afonso thought it was just thanks to the magic sword that Lucius used, and to him, that wasn't fair. The four remaining, including Afonso, decided to flee, but it was useless. Lucius was already in front of them. Finally, only Afonso remained. This fool now realized the gap in strength, desperately trying to run again. Of course, that was useless. Lucius from the beginning had planned to leave Afonso last because he could see Afonso's dirty eyes. Afonso tried to offer money and promised not to tell about this, just to keep his petty life. Back at Lot's mansion, they saw Haruto off. Princess Floria gathered all her courage to talk. She asked permission to talk for a while if they met again to thank him properly. Haruto happily accepted, and as predicted, the princess seemed to have recognized him. Currently, Haruto thought he should be a bit more careful not to reveal his identity. Seeing lies, Lot invite Haruto to stay in Amon. Hisasaki, not wanting to be outdone, also wanted to stay for a while with the reason of protecting the girl's safety. Finally, Lot wanted to host a party and invite Haruto as well. Hisasaki noticed the princess wasn't acting as usual. She was often contemplative, and he wasn't happy to see that, saying Floria looked strange since meeting Haruto. Floria's mind seemed not to be here, so when she heard the hero speak, Floria's face turned red, trying to refute, but Hisasaki had realized. He said from what he saw, the princess kept staring at Ryo's face. Jonah helped Floria explain. Floria was their representative, so perhaps the princess was thinking of ways to thank him after being rescued. Even Gusta wanted to recruit Ryo. Jonah also soothed Hisasaki by praising him, making this fool immediately happy. Meanwhile, Alphonse, half-conscious, was dragged by Lucius to Ray. When he fully woke up, he was immediately shocked to see a monster wearing knight's armor. Seeing a person transforming into a monster, Alphonse vomited when seeing that scene. In general, this scene would make anyone a bit scared. Ray asked why this child was still conscious. Lucius told Ray to experiment on him. He felt Alphonse would become a perfect undead. Ray initially didn't want to do it because if it failed, his gem would be wasted. Lucius said it was fine. Anyway, Ray already had many enhanced undead, plus existing pawns. He felt his army was enough. Ray then experimented on Alphonse. That evening, we received news that the investigation team had still not returned, thinking that the monsters might be too many or they had gotten lost. Floria, in her room, was still thinking if Haruto was Ryo. She felt guilty if that was Ryo because she still hadn't thanked him for saving her before and clearing up the misunderstanding. Lot met with Gusta Huguenot, talking about the missing knights. She wanted to send the army to find them. Gusta Huguenot stopped her, telling her to wait until morning. According to him, there was still a chance they would return. They wondered why there were still many monsters, although previously thought they had cleared them. Thinking about the existence of minotaurs or species that could be even stronger, Lot wanted to send Iris and her maids along with her skilled knights to investigate. Gusta again suggested his knights could handle it. Lot refused, and she chose not to use adventurers because if all of them went, Amand would have no one to protect it if attacked. Meanwhile, in the forest, Lucius was leisurely eating while Ray was busy observing the undead. Lucius was bored looking at them because looking at these disgusting things somewhat affected his meal, so he told Ray to put them away. Ray said he would attack at dawn. Beside them was an undead, completely different from the others. Surprisingly, this one could talk. It said it would handle everything itself. According to Ray, the perfect undead were more ferocious and skilled than those enhanced with power. Although reason was lost, there was still thought, so they would be a difficult species to deal with. And it turned out this undead was actually Alphonse. Early morning, Ashia woke Haruto, announcing that monsters had suddenly appeared nearby because she seemed to have sensed them. The position wasn't certain, but it was clearly from the west. From their chaotic and powerful flow, the number was certainly very large. At the western gate, guards saw from afar someone on the main road. They thought they were the knights who had investigated the forest yesterday. After coming closer, they were shocked, frightened, and immediately rang the alarm bell. Because they weren't those foolish knights but monsters. Ryo and Ashia had also grasped some of the situation. Cilia immediately came to meet Ryo, asking what was happening. He still didn't know what was going on, only that monsters had suddenly appeared nearby and their numbers were quite large. Ryo really wanted to gather information first. Cilia noticed he was worried about her, so she asked him not to worry and said that she was quite strong when using magic, so she would also try her best. The residents had also been alerted by the commotion. Ryo began checking the situation from the air. Looking from afar, the western gate had been attacked by many monsters, including goblins, orcs, minotaurs, and undead just standing still in front of the gate. Goblins and orcs began entering the gate of Amand. There, knights, mages, and adventurers were all prepared along with reinforcements continuously arriving. Lot's maids guided civilians to safe places. With this situation, Haruto felt they could handle it. Ashia informed Haruto that a large number of monsters had also been detected from the eastern direction. This surprised Haruto. The eastern gate was easily destroyed. There were only a few guards there because they were focused on the western direction. Haruto thought for a moment while observing the situation, then asked Ashia and Cilia to wait in the room. Currently, residents were being evacuated en masse to the north, making the streets extremely crowded. Haruto himself would go to the eastern gate. At the eastern gate, Chloe was helping with defense. Although she could push back those who came close, their numbers were too many. Chloe now only hoped reinforcements would arrive quickly. They were surprised to see the monster army flying out. It turned out to be because of Haruto. He ran over and said that until reinforcements arrived, he would help. Seeing Haruto, Chloe immediately rejoiced and thanked him. Haruto only asked them to guard here, not letting monsters in, then used spirit techniques, once again rushing into the enemy formation, fighting in the style of an assassin plus a duelist. They were again stunned and admired Haruto's abilities. Meanwhile, Lot was directing strategy, requesting reports even for the smallest details. Natalie came to report that minotaurs had also appeared from the eastern gate in large numbers. The current situation hadn't been confirmed, but the army there was trying to hold on. However, due to lack of troops, Natalie requested sending reinforcements. Lot couldn't send knights or adventurers there. They would collide with refugees crowding the roads. Moreover, the maids had also been assigned to the western gate, and Cosette was helping with evacuation. Lot ordered Natalie to quickly bring Cosette to the eastern gate. Not long after Natalie left, another maid reported that currently at the eastern gate, a skilled swordsman had appeared and was fighting the monsters alone. Lot immediately felt relieved. She knew it was Haruto, and now she no longer worried about the eastern gate. In an alley, Ray and Lucius had successfully infiltrated. Lucius was a bit annoyed. He really wanted to fight but was told by Ray to wait. Ray only said to wait for a signal from the Minotaur before acting. During this time, Ray discovered the spirit he wanted. Ashia was just standing still in the center of the city, and the defense forces were moving to the battlefield. Switching to the eastern gate, Chloe and the knights were amazed at Haruto's abilities, but he felt strange about why the Minotaurs and undead weren't advancing. If they had advanced earlier, they could have quickly broken through. Even the Minotaur could have jumped straight in. It was as if they had another purpose. Haruto asked Ashia about the situation in the city center. Ashia reported that nothing had changed. The movement of monsters remained the same, only that the evacuation was almost complete. Meanwhile, at the western gate, the monsters had been stopped, so Haruto wanted to return first. Natalie and Cosette arrived to see Haruto fighting, so both girls gazed adoringly as he fought. Chloe said Haruto had been fighting alone until now. Natalie and Cosette wanted to take turns for Haruto. They didn't know that Haruto's magical energy was very large, so they thought Haruto's magical energy was about to run out from fighting for so long. They called Haruto, thanking him before asking to switch places. Haruto asked permission to go to friends who hadn't been evacuated, but before leaving, he would finish off the Minotaur since they wanted to switch places from the beginning. And anyway, Haruto was just a commoner, so Natalie had no reason to keep Haruto here. But what made Natalie wonder was the presence of a Minotaur very far behind. Haruto said these things were easy, and to let him handle it. Natalie was very surprised when Haruto used his spirit technique. That single attack killed the Minotaur. Once again, they were stunned seeing that scene, especially Cosette, who fell even more for Haruto. Even when Haruto asked permission to leave, Cosette thanked him with a seductive tone. Natalie and Chloe immediately stopped Cosette and invited Haruto to go. Meanwhile, at the western gate, Iris was defeating many monsters. She wanted to eliminate monsters with a wide-range attack, but realized her magic limit along with the number of monsters was even more than in the forest yesterday. Iris was also curious why the undead and minotaurs weren't advancing. Suddenly, the undead screamed, followed by the loud roar of the minotaur. With that monster's scream, Ray and Lucius also began to act. They were currently with Alphonse. He would be the main star of today. The undead and minotaurs began to move. Iris ordered others to resist them while she would handle the minotaur. In the city center, undead revealed themselves after hiding under cloaks and seemed to intend to harm innocent civilians. Haruto immediately eliminated them in the blink of an eye, and Chloe arrived. It turned out the first people Haruto saved were Chloe's mother and sister. Chloe was on her way to Lai's lot to report that humanoid monsters had appeared in the city. With no other choice, Haruto escorted the residents to evacuation. At Lot's mansion, Hisasaki asked if monsters frequently attacked the city. Gusta said this didn't happen frequently, but that didn't mean it had never happened. Before, cities and villages had disappeared due to monster attacks. Stia immediately made a mocking face at Hisasaki, who was worried, but he immediately became concerned and apologized when glared at by his father. Haruto and others had arrived at the refugee shelter for residents. When they were about to leave, a knight came to report Lot's order to evacuate Haruto and his teammates to the mansion. Thinking of Celia and Ashia's safety, Haruto accepted. Meanwhile, the undead Alphonse and Lucius had successfully infiltrated the mansion. Alphonse still remembered the nooks and crannies of the mansion. He led the way to the living room. Before the living room, Lucius reminded Alphonse not to touch Princess Floria. He could injure the hero but not kill him. A knight appeared and pressed the hiding Lucius. From the living room, there was a loud noise outside. A knight went out to check, but was immediately thrown back inside. Shocking everyone in the room, why were monsters here? Captain Raymond immediately used physical enhancement techniques, while the undead Alphonse ordered other undead to advance. Captain Raymond was shocked because the monster's skin was very hard. Unable to do anything to them, he was soon defeated. The three remaining knights were fending off other undead. Alphonse ordered an undead to advance toward the princess group in the corner of the room. Hizusaki tried to throw a statue, but of course, it was ineffective against the undead's hard body. Captain Raymond felt it was critical, but he couldn't help. Other knights were also busy fending off undead. Increasingly, they were being pushed back. On the other side, the undead were getting closer to the princess's group. With no other choice, Hizusaki used his holy sword. Seeing this, the undead Alphonse stepped forward, ordering the other undead to retreat, then suddenly attacked Hizusaki. A punch from him knocked out Hizusaki, and Alphonse laughed loudly. From the beginning, he had really wanted to teach Hizusaki a lesson because of his personality. Gusta was surprised why this monster could talk. Alphonse then turned to Gusta, saying don't hope to die easily. Gusta became even more frightened, trying to resist but taking a direct punch from the undead. Alphonse grabbed Gusta's collar. Although Gusta Huguenot's condition was already very bad, he said this was nothing yet. Stia successfully pushed back an undead near him. When about to go to his father, Alphonse threw Gusta toward him, after which this guy laughed again. While the undead Alphonse was busy with his joy, Jonah told Princess Floria to run to the hallway. She would create a diversion to buy time. Floria actually didn't want to, but Jonah begged her because if they continued like this, everyone would be eliminated. Captain Raymond had escaped. He immediately rushed to the undead Alphonse. Unfortunately, his slash was easily blocked. After they ignored Raymond, one of the undead's hands was cut off from behind, but strangely, it didn't feel pain. On the contrary, it laughed as if mocking. Jonah secretly took Princess Floria out toward the door. Outside, she saw a person and begged for help. Floria ran after being thrown outside. Jonah closed the door, then she tried to hold on as much as possible. Unexpectedly, the cloaked person outside was Lucius. Floria herself didn't recognize this was a bad person. Lucius immediately captured Princess Floria. Outside Lot's mansion, Haruto was led inside by a knight. Ashia stopped, telling Haruto that she sensed monsters from the direction of that room. Lot arrived, feeling glad that Haruto and his teammates were safe. Lot thanked Haruto for stopping monsters at the eastern gate. While Lot invited them in, Haruto asked if any monsters had gotten through. Lot said there was no such information from the soldiers. Haruto said from the direction of that room, he felt a strange presence. Lot said that was where the hero and Princess Floria were, and it should be safe there. Meanwhile, Lucius revealed himself to Princess Floria, saying he was just trash. Floria immediately realized this person was targeting her. While Lucius was toying with Floria, Ray appeared, telling him to hurry because the humanoid spirit had arrived. It would be dangerous to face it. Lucius complied, carrying Princess Floria on his back, threatening to cut off her legs if she tried anything. Back to the room earlier, Jonah was still holding on with her magic. Her magic was effective against enhanced undead but not against Alphonse. Nevertheless, Jonah continued trying to attack. Meanwhile, Captain Raymond was exhausted. On the other side, Stia was protecting his unconscious father. Alphonse laughed, thinking that all of Jonah's attacks didn't hurt him. He began approaching Jonah, making her afraid. Hizusaki finally woke up. His jaw ached painfully, and he was angry. That anger activated the physical enhancement from his holy sword. Alphonse was slightly impressed that Hizusaki could still stand up. Although he had punched very hard earlier, Alphonse ordered two undead to advance. But unexpectedly, Hizusaki killed both with just one slash. That shocked Alphonse. Hizusaki moved toward Alphonse, demanding a duel. At the same time, two other undead approached Jonah. Quickly, Hizusaki moved behind them without Alphonse noticing. One slash from him cut off both their heads. Hizusaki again turned to Alphonse, throwing a sharp look, saying he would kill him. Hizusaki used the ability of the sword to shoot something like water. Haruto and others had seen the water flow from the room, while Hizusaki himself was surprised why he could do that. Alphonse felt he couldn't fight against Hizusaki and decided to flee. Hizusaki was about to chase when Ray suddenly struck from behind, knocking him unconscious. Ray decided to act because he thought it would be troublesome if a hero awakened. Ray then told Alphonse to go outside. Ray considered the undead Alphonse a defective product. Since Alphonse was too immature when finding joy, leading to carelessness, he wasn't a perfect undead at all. Afterward, Ray summoned more undead to help Alphonse. Those undead jumped down from the upper floor. Refugees there immediately ran in chaos. The knights tried to stop them but couldn't. At that moment, Haruto acted, and Lucius appeared carrying the princess on the rooftop. Suddenly, he stopped for a moment, shouting that the princess had been captured by him. Floria was about to speak when Lucius immediately threatened to cut off her legs. Haruto recognized this voice accurately because it was the voice of the person who had killed his parents. Haruto threw a hateful look in that direction. Celia was shocked to see Haruto's expression. Lucius continued running, so Haruto intended to chase. Right then, other undead continued arriving, in large numbers. One appeared behind Lot. Lot's maids all arrived. Ashia understood Haruto's situation. She told him to go, and Celia also told Rio to go, saying she could see Rio's face now was suffering. Then Celia trapped several undead and told Rio that she could also fight. The situation could be controlled, so Haruto decided to go. He asked Ashia to handle the rest and told Lot that he would definitely bring Princess Floria back. Celia created a barrier for herself. Lai's Lot was amazed at Celia's abilities. She felt even royal mages might not be able to do this. Lot then looked at Ashia, who was outside the barrier, asking if that girl was okay. Moreover, she didn't have a weapon. Celia asked her not to worry, saying Ashia was as strong as Haruto, which was enough to amaze Lai's Lot. Ashia activated body enhancement techniques, beginning to attack each undead. These undead revived. Ashia went to Chloe, borrowing Chloe's spear. With this spear, Ashia's dance was truly skillful. She glided across the ground, killing each undead. Lai's Lot became curious. Who was this Haruto really? Alphonse was on the roof, seeing Ashia as the girl who went with Haruto yesterday. He went down and ordered other undead not to kill her. He would kill her himself to avenge his humiliation, and told the rest to take care of the woman he pointed to. Lai's Lot was shocked and angry when hearing Alphonse's words. This fool began to attack Ashia. Meanwhile, the undead finally broke through Celia's barrier. She hurriedly created an earth wall to contain them. However, unexpectedly, one had escaped. It immediately rushed to Celia. Ashia moved first, throwing the spear that pierced it. Seeing Ashia without a weapon, Alphonse confidently said that this was the end for her. A maid threw her staff to Ashia, who used it to stab Alphonse's heart. Thinking it was over, Ashia went to Celia. Because it was undead, the heart wasn't a weak point. Alphonse once again stood up to attack, but she was also tired of talking much, just using a gentle swipe. Water flowed, the head fell, and he died immediately. Haruto was certain the voice earlier was Lucius's, the person he had been searching for a long time. He tracked Lucius's presence from the magical traces he left behind. Haruto quickly gave chase, attacking Lucius immediately. He hadn't expected someone could catch up with him. On the other hand, Haruto's eyes toward him were extremely sharp. The flame of hatred in him began to burn strongly. Mihezu dreamed a dream where she saw the past of his mother. Young Rio about their black hair, different from everyone else. His mother answered because they weren't from here, shocking Mihezu. The dream shifted to Rio's mother being killed by someone who then toyed with Rio. She then saw Rio in the present, his face full of different emotions. The grown-up Rio had killed the person who murdered his mother. Mihezu was very shocked seeing that scene, so she tried to hug the fading Rio, her chest feeling a sharp pain. Back to Haruto, who was trying to appear calm. Princess Floria was immediately overjoyed seeing him. Because Haruto was silent, Lucius told him to speak. Haruto asked to see his face. Lucius wasn't happy being ordered like that. He thought this person came for the princess, so he made a small threat, pressing the knife against Floria. Haruto tried to appear unconcerned about Floria to make Lucius think the hostage had no value. Haruto said he actually had business with him and had been looking for this guy for a very long time. Lucius smiled and asked what he would do if it was indeed Lucius. Haruto declared he would kill him here. Lucius laughed loudly, finding this interesting. Lucius realized this was the person who had made a contract with the humanoid spirit as Ray had said. However, Lucius didn't remember who Haruto was. But clearly, due to having a grudge against him, they must have met somewhere before. Finally, Lucius also revealed his face. Though shocked, Haruto appeared calm. Lucius asked why the person who was looking for and intending to kill him looked so calm. Haruto affirmed he really wanted to kill Lucius. That was everything to him. Lucius asked Haruto to introduce himself. Haruto only repeatedly answered he would kill Lucius. Lucius was also tired of that answer. He suddenly attacked with his knife. That knife had no effect on Haruto's clothes, making Lucius slightly surprised. Lucius concluded that Haruto's defensive capability had no gaps, and he felt more excited, using his magic sword to attack Haruto immediately. When there was an opening, Haruto attacked back. Lucius immediately used Floria as a shield, causing Haruto to withdraw his sword. From that, Lucius deduced that the princess really had value to Haruto, or Haruto didn't want to involve others in his revenge, so he still thought Haruto was too naive. Back at Lot's mansion, Celia was trying to protect Lot and the residents. Ashia was still fighting with many undead. The maids were also doing the same. The knights had been incapacitated by the undead. They no longer cared about other people, all targeting Ashia, but to her, they were nothing. On the other side, Lucius attacked again, his sword tip extending as if using spatial magic. Haruto moved aside, using the force from a tree to attack him. Lucius again used the princess to threaten. Haruto's presence suddenly disappeared then reappeared from above. Lucius was very angry with Haruto's tactics. Although he kept at a moderate distance to not hurt the princess, someone like this clearly wasn't an ordinary person. But he wondered why he had forgotten such a strong person. The only answer was that he had met him when he was young. Lucius felt unhappy to continue the battle. If Haruto didn't reveal his identity, he said he had too many people who hated him, so he couldn't remember them all. but he was interested in Haruto. He asked who Haruto was. Haruto realized he wasn't worth being remembered by him. Lucius said he couldn't forget a sword fight with someone so strong. He asked again who Haruto was. He just remained silent, making Lucius angry, even when threatening to cut off Floria's head. Haruto still remained silent, not caring. Seeing this, Lucius changed the question, pointing to meeting when Haruto was young. Haruto's silence confirmed it. Haruto said nothing, making him angry. Finally, he offered a condition for an exchange: temporarily release the princess and Haruto must reveal his identity. Then they would fight. That was beneficial for Haruto, so he agreed. Lucius told Floria to stand in the middle where she could be seen and also threatened that if she went far, there were monsters nearby. Floria stood where Lucius ordered, so he could use Floria as a hostage again. Haruto said that more than 10 years ago, he lived in the capital of the Bircham Kingdom. Floria was immediately shocked. Haruto continued that Lucius frequently visited a family. Lucius immediately laughed loudly because he remembered very clearly. He felt he shouldn't have remembered Rio because his hair color had changed. Lucius recounted Rio's helplessness at that time, both telling and laughing. Lucius also wanted to meet Rio, looking forward to this moment of revenge. Therefore, he hadn't killed Rio at that time. Rio recalled that incident, from his mother instructing not to open the door to strangers to Lucius taking advantage of a child's trust. And that was the beginning of a heartbreaking tragedy. Rio had decided to live for revenge and lived until now to kill Lucius. Rio had lived exactly as he had expected, living for revenge, destroying someone's life. That was the greatest joy in his life. He became even more excited. Rio said he was disappointed because Lucius had become exactly as he had imagined. Lucius recalled his father's story from before, that Rio's mother was once a princess of a country. Lucius mocked Rio's mother's kindness. Even when death was near, she still tried her best to protect. Lucius recounted her final words. Hearing the name Rio, Princess Floria was immediately shocked. She could see Rio's shadow in Haruto. Even the way he held the sword was similar. The story earlier had changed Rio's expression. Lucius was delighted to see that. Rio said those were all your last words. Lucius excitedly laughed. His cloak not yet begun to move before he was shocked his hand was quickly cut off, not believing what had just happened. When he attacked again, Rio had already kept his distance. Lucius stanched the blood and pain from his arm. He wondered why he couldn't react in time. He concluded he couldn't see Rio's movements, thinking he had used some kind of trick. Rio attacked again. This time Lucius could see and block it because the movement was slower, but he was pushed back. During the sword fight, sensing Rio's physical strength was very great. Rio's energy continuously increased. Lucius could only defend and run. Looking back, he was immediately struck by an attack. Lucius ran away again. He believed he couldn't see Rio's movements earlier due to his enormous physical strength. From behind, he attacked again with the power of the sword. Lucius still held on but felt Rio was strange. Although he had been continuously using attacks, Rio wasn't tired at all. Now he knew he was fighting a monster. This time Rio used spirit techniques. Lucius was shocked again, not expecting Rio could use spirit techniques. He dodged and jumped to the side, but Rio had prepared an attack. Lucius successfully dodged, jumping over Rio, who also followed to block the slash. Lucius's body was full of wounds but still could stand up and grin despite the possibility of death. Rio attacked again. The princess was very shocked seeing this. Lucius felt his internal organs and ribs were injured. His vision blurred. He was losing blood. Lucius wanted to reattach his arm, but unfortunately, Rio had taken it and burned it. Rio approached him to end everything. A punch hit Lucius's left eye area, causing him to scream in pain. Rio showed no mercy, stabbing into Lucius's body. Seeing Lucius still holding on and able to move, Rio decided to burn him from the mana flow of the sword. Lucius's painful screams were piercing. Princess Floria couldn't bear to look. While enduring the pain, Lucius turned his head to one side. He saw Princess Floria. With a difficult movement, he had controlled the knife to fly toward Floria. Recognizing that, Rio immediately rushed to prevent it. Lucius sat up, laughing with labored breath, guessing that Rio would protect the princess. Rio prepared another attack to truly finish Lucius. Ray arrived first to save Lucius, telling Lucius not to play around. Rio wanted Ray to hand Lucius over to him. Of course, Ray disagreed, knowing Rio would kill Lucius, but he had business with Lucius. Rio couldn't do anything, so he taunted Lucius, mocking his pathetic escape and saying in another 10 years, Lucius would run away again because by then, his right arm would be cut off. Too angry, Lucius was agitated. He told Ray to let him go. Ray didn't want to say Lucius would die as soon as the physical enhancement technique disappeared. They had to retreat first. Rio certainly didn't just stand and watch. Ray smiled confidently about escaping and hiding. Suddenly, Ashia sensed a strange presence and saw something above heading toward Haruto. She immediately told Haruto to be careful from above. When Haruto looked up, A dragon shot a large flame at him. Along with that, Rei disappeared. After the large flame ended, Ashia thought everything was over. She asked Celia to remove the magic barrier. Celia still looked worried. Ashia said Haruto was fine. At Haruto's location, that dragon had left right after shooting the flame. Haruto and Floria were both okay, only the area around them was burned black. Haruto felt a bit annoyed that Lucius had escaped. Floria tried to confirm Rio's identity and apologized. Haruto still played dumb, asking what she was sorry for. Floria recalled what had happened at the academy before, when Rio saved her from danger, but she hadn't thanked him in time. Instead, Rio was falsely accused and forced to leave the academy. Haruto still didn't admit it, slightly pushing Floria away, saying he had no reason to accept thanks or apologies from the princess. Floria then asked if she was bothering Rio. Haruto denied it but requested she just forget the name Rio. Floria complied, but that made her sad. Haruto could only apologize in his heart because he couldn't admit it. Haruto brought Princess Floria back. Meanwhile, Lies-Lot thanked Celia and Ashia. Thanks to both of them, everything was safe. Seeing many people injured, Ashia said the situation wasn't over yet. She told Lies-Lot to think about the future. Celia offered to help with the treatment. In the living room, Gusta Huguenot had woken up but was still weak. He was being treated by Jonah. Other knights were being cared for by Lot's maids. Celia replaced Jonah in treating Gusta Huguenot while Jonah explained what had happened. She said monsters had attacked. Thanks to hero Hizasaki, they had survived. Currently, Hizasaki was unconscious. Jonah asked where Princess Floria was. Lies-Lot bitterly said a strange man had appeared in the mansion, kidnapped Princess Floria, and escaped. Jonah felt guilty. Her intention was to help Floria escape, but it had ended like this. Gusta comforted her, saying it was the right decision. Trust in Haruto. Gusta then praised the person who had treated him because he felt the pain starting to disappear. Celia said it was thanks to Jonah's first aid. After finishing the treatment, Celia suggested Gusta rest. Haruto returned, bringing Princess Floria, immediately welcomed by Celia, Ashia, and Lot. Haruto said, as promised, he had successfully brought the princess back, but the kidnapper had escaped. Lot didn't mind that. For her, bringing the princess back was already extraordinary. Lot didn't know how to thank Haruto. When Haruto was about to hand Floria to Lot, the young princess wouldn't let go of Haruto's clothes. Apologizing with the reason that her legs were still weak, Haruto continued carrying her inside. While walking, Lot asked about the princess's kidnapper. Haruto knew that man's identity, more precisely, he was too familiar with him. Lot immediately asked the person's name. Haruto said it was Lucius. Lot asked why Haruto knew him. He said it was related to him in the past. Lot apologized for asking about this. Meanwhile, Rei was tending to Lucius's wounds. This guy still felt pain because the wounds on his body were too severe. Rei didn't want Lucius to die uselessly because he still needed him. So he put a magic stone into Lucius's body, but he still felt pain. He said if he had his left arm, he would surely have won. Rei told him to give up, telling the harsh truth that Lucius couldn't fight against Rio with his current strength. Lucius was shocked to hear that. Rei said this time, accept defeat. Stay away from him in the future because that was the best choice. Lucius didn't accept it. Feeling angry, Rei didn't let Lucius argue, emphasizing that Lucius was weak. Back at Lot's mansion, Jonah was very grateful to see Princess Floria. After taking Floria away, Haruto actually wanted to leave badly, but Lot suggested resting for a while. Gusta also agreed and thanked Haruto. When leaving, Celia seemed surprised to see Princess Floria's eyes. In the room, Rio said the princess knew his identity. Celia understood that was the reason why the princess looked like that. Rio said he had asked the princess to forget the name Rio. Celia believed everything would be fine. Princess Floria wouldn't reveal it because she was that kind of person. Rio still felt it was too risky to stay. Celia's identity might also be exposed. Therefore, after the conversation with Lot, Haruto suggested returning to the spirit village. He would also report about Sumura Satsuki, who had become the hero of Gala. Ashia understood Haruto's feelings, asking if Haruto was sure he wanted to return to the village like this. Haruto said it was fine. Celia was curious about Rio's story, wondering what had happened between Rio and Lucius. Celia said it was okay if Rio didn't want to tell. Haruto decided to tell that to avenge his mother. Lucius was the person who had killed his mother right before his eyes, and he might also be the person who had killed his father. Haruto intended to tell if asked, and he didn't want to lie to Celia. Haruto continued the story, saying he hated Lucius, would never forgive him. He had decided to face him without running away. Celia asked him to tell her if anything happened. No matter what happened, she would always be by Rio's side. Haruto met with others to talk about what had happened. Gusta said he knew a little about Lucius. Previously, he was a low-level noble of the Bircham Kingdom, named Lucius Ogio, once one of the candidates to inherit the Sword King title and was someone who could surpass the person currently holding the Sword King title, Afet Ermi. The reason Lucius wasn't chosen as the successor to the Sword King was because his family had declined before he could succeed. Jonah concluded Lucius had a grudge against Bertram. That was why he kidnapped Princess Floria. Lot said that hadn't been confirmed. Lot then asked about the person with him, Ray, whom Haruto had mentioned. Gusta had heard that name. It was the name of an ambassador from the Shali Empire, someone who had a close relationship with the Abo House, but it hadn't been confirmed if that was the Ray they were talking about, because according to Floria, he had covered his face with a cloak. Haruto also couldn't see his face clearly. Lot suggested they should pursue Lucius. Gusta said he would investigate if he was related to his territory. He would return to Jordania, and Lot would also investigate. Lot asked permission to inquire about Haruto's plans. He said he had urgent business, planning to leave Amond. Lot said she would prepare a thank you gift. Haruto asked to decline because currently, Amond was having difficulties after being attacked by monsters. Lot still wanted to give a gift. Gusta also did similarly. They asked Haruto to state his wish. With Lot, Haruto asked permission for him and his group to attend the hero introduction feast in the Gala Kingdom. Haruto said he wanted to meet Sumura Satsuki. A few days later, at the Spirit Village, Latifa noticed a magical mutation. She immediately was certain it was Haruto, so she asked permission to welcome him. Then others also followed. Hearing Haruto was back, Mihezu looked worried. Others also came to welcome him. Now Mihezu, Masato, and Aki had mastered the Shira language. Haruto informed them that he had found information about Sumura Satsuki, who had become the hero of the Gala Kingdom. But the whereabouts of Aki and Masato's brother still hadn't been found. Aki looked sad hearing that. Haruto immediately said that as long as they knew about Satsuki's existence, it was very likely that Aki's brother was also in this world. Hearing that, Aki became happy again. Haruto said that in a month, there would be a feast to introduce Satsuki. If Mihezu, Aki, and Masato wanted to participate, they could go with him. Mihezu didn't seem too concerned. In her heart right now, she was grateful that Haruto had returned. Because in her dream, Haruto had looked both angry and sad. That kept making her think. When they were about to eat, Haruto said he really liked egg rolls. Mihezu was stunned because that was also Haruto's favorite food. The hero introduction day arrived. The feast was attended by high-level nobles from many countries. In this feast, Haruto was awarded the title of Honorary Knight of the Gala Kingdom. At this time, Ryo was using the name Amakawa Haruto. When his full name was announced, Mihezu was extremely shocked.